In the DC world, I start with Ultraman. While this video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyright or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. This a transmitter. War World, Burno City, Court Tower, office area. After bringing Ultraman to the office area, Jello turned to look at the girl who looked like his disciple and asked, "Ultraman, are you ready?" "Ready? What preparation?" Upon hearing this, Ultraman was confused. "Preparation for revenge," Jello whispered. Jello's voice was very soft, but it was not so for Ultraman. "Teacher, are you saying that you found the murderer who invaded my home?" Ultraman took 2 steps back in shock. After she reacted, she clenched her fists. The armor in the form of armor sensed the anger of the owner and extended a part of the armor to cover Ultraman's right arm. "Yes." Jello nodded, and then he stretched out his hand and a holographic projection of a spaceman appeared. This spaceman is also humanoid, but has reptilian scaly skin on the back. The scales are red, the front is grey and smooth skin, and there are 3 pairs of complex and hideous horns on the top of the head. As soon as she saw the appearance of this alien, Ultraman was sure that this was the alien who attacked her hometown. Ultraman widened her eyes, stretched out her armor right hand, pointed at the holographic image, and said loudly, "It's this guy, I will never remember it wrong." This group of guys is called Diaspora. They have a huge fleet of spaceships and a large number of soldiers. Under normal circumstances, even civilizations that can set up defensive measures in the star system find it difficult to resist them. Jello told the intelligence he had been looking for these days. One advantage of being in the war world is that as long as you are strong enough, there is nothing you can't get. And with Jello's identity, as long as you provide some keywords and then entrust Luluo to do things, it is difficult to fail to get things done. When the results were just obtained, there were actually several types of aliens as suspects, but the Diaspora was the most suspicious. First of all, the Diaspora did not have their own home planet. They were pirate civilizations wandering around the universe with giant fleets. Secondly, the Diaspora had a record of capturing other aliens of slave villains, and they were also wanted targets of the Green Lantern Corps. Finally, the intelligence mentioned that the Diaspora people like to force other races, and the purpose is unknown to outsiders. This made Jello very suspicious, and with Ultraman as a witness today, he was more convinced that this was the culprit who destroyed Ultraman's hometown. But how did Ultraman fall into the hands of Mondo II? Jello thought it should be some kind of transaction, but there was no substantial evidence, so he didn't say much. Diaspora. Ultraman gritted her teeth, her beautiful face twisted, and her eyes glared at the front. Finding the target gave Ultraman a place to vent her anger. "Calm down." Jello flashed behind Ultraman, raised his hands and pressed them on Ultraman's shoulders, and advised, "Diaspora people are very strong, not to mention that you can't leave the war world now." Ultraman gritted her teeth, and heavy breath kept coming out of her mouth and nose. The lady in the past seemed to no longer exist. 3 minutes later, Ultraman finally recovered and said, "Sorry, teacher, I couldn't control myself." Revenge can be a goal, but it can't be an obstacle that affects your judgment. Jello looked at Ultraman and comforted her. Suddenly, he changed the subject and said, "Don't let down your Silver Cross armor. Slowly move towards your goal. Even if you only move forward by 1 millimeter, you must continue to move forward." "I understand, teacher, I want to go to the training room." Ultraman nodded solemnly and said hello to Jello before leaving. "Go." Jello nodded to indicate that she could leave. After Ultraman left the top floor, Mindy's figure walked out of the darkness. She glanced at the projection of the Diaspora star and said faintly, "Diaspora star, this child may never have the opportunity to take revenge in this life. You are still comforting her like this. Aren't you afraid that she will be too disappointed by then? Do you know the Diaspora star very well?" Jello frowned and asked Mindy. "Of course." Mindy's tone was very low, as if he was deliberately suppressing himself. This reminded Jello of himself when he had just started to get in touch with the dark side of the war world, and his tone was almost the same as Mindy's. The number of their warships is not less than that of the Zerg, and the number of their soldiers is like a sea of sand, especially the strongest guy. It's just like a nightmare. At the end of his words, Mindy's tone even trembled, but he was always wearing a helmet, and Jello couldn't see what his expression was under the mask. Listening to Mindy's words, Jello probably guessed something, and he didn't continue to find Mindy unhappy, but turned around and asked, "What do you want me to do this time? Are you going to advance the plan?" "No, I'm here to ask you for help." Minhee shook his head and said, and from the tone, he seemed to have returned to a normal state of mind. Jello teased, help. To be honest, you are more capable than me. I'm better than you in some aspects, but you are much better than me in technology. As he spoke, Minhee took out a stone, which was green and shiny, and Jello was very familiar with it. Help me copy some of this stone, it will be very useful to me. You want to copy kryptonite? Jello took the kryptonite and played with it for a while. He found that there were traces of cotton on it. It should be cut from a large kryptonite. This thing is excellent as an energy source. I need this kind of thing. Minhee said to Jello. The effect of the copy will be a little worse. Can you accept it? Jello was quite clear about artificial kryptonite. After all, he once had a kryptonite that was bigger than this one. He held the kryptonite directly in his left hand and asked Minhee. What is the quantity? Minhee asked. The quantity will not be small. Jello said to Minhee. Okay, I'll wait for your news. Minhee seemed to be relieved, then walked into the darkness and left the court tower. After Minhee left, Jello's left hand suddenly emitted a dazzling green light. He raised his left hand and found that it was the gravity watch Clegg gave him. After absorbing part of the energy of the kryptonite, the gravity watch stopped. Jello quickly took out the scanner. After scanning, Jello captured a message. After translating, he got a string of messages. The survivors of Krypton are here, come quickly. After translating the message, Jello's pupils trembled. This thing is not only a gravity applicator, but also a signaling device. Threat from Krypton. World Burno City Core Tower top floor office area. After confirming that the gravity watch actually has the function of sending signals, Jello suddenly became very worried. Not all Kryptonians are the same as Clegg. As far as Jello knows, Clegg's cousin came to Earth before he was captured in War World, and Jello went to see her before the end of summer vacation. Since the Kryptonian who is most friendly to him is already on Earth, who else can be the Kryptonian in the universe? General Zod. Or Hale. Or even Rayo? Thinking of this, Jello's head was covered with cold sweat. Facing General Zod, Jello thought he still had the power to protect himself. If he couldn't beat him, he could run away. In addition, this is War World, and Mondo will not ignore Zod. If the two guys fight, Jello may still have a chance. And Hale, this paranoid has the ability to time, and he is also a super Kryptonian. Kryptonite is useless to him. After fighting this guy, Jello felt that he could sleep well. As for the last Rayo, Zero didn't know much about him. He might be the conceptual god of Krypton, or a powerful Kryptonian pretending to be a god, but in any case, Zero couldn't beat him. If you don't count his brother Clegg, then Rayo is the strongest Kryptonian. In addition to the Kryptonians that Zero remembered, there might be some Kryptonians wandering outside. Zero couldn't guess the thoughts of these Kryptonians. It's bad. Zero stroked his forehead, his hair drooped naturally, and his face looked a little ugly. Minhee and himself inadvertently added unstable factors to the next plan. After thinking for a moment, Zero accepted the fact. Those strong men will come if they want to. Whether it's war or peace, he, Zero, is always ready to accompany him. After sorting out his mood, Zero sent a message to Minhee. Minhee also has the right to know about this matter. A few minutes later, Minhee sent a communication request. Are you saying that the kryptonite I gave you activated the Kryptonian technology in you and sent a message that can attract Kryptonians? Minhee asked in a deep voice. That's right. Jello nodded and replied. Kryptonians, I remember their home planet seemed to have been bombed for a long time, and their combat power is not that good, right? Compared with their technology, their combat power can only be regarded as lousy. Minhee said with a tone of confusion and a hint of disgust, and at the same time, there was some contempt for the combat power of the Kryptonians. After despising the combat power of the Kryptonians, Minhee added, rather than worrying about their combat power, you might as well worry about their technology. Kryptonian technology is definitely one of the most advanced, but their technology failed to protect their home planet. It's really ironic. No, your information is wrong, Minhee. Ignoring the disgust for Krypton in Minhee's tone, Jello shook his head. In this war world, he is the only one who knows the true strength of Kryptonians best. Although not every Kryptonian is as powerful as Clegg, after absorbing the radiation of the yellow sun, most Kryptonians can gain terrible power. Their fists and feet can tear apart buildings, their bodies can withstand laser cannons, and their thermal vision can easily approach the surface temperature of the sun, 6,000 degrees Celsius. It can be said that the power that Zero needs to spend a lot of effort to possess is just a power that is readily available to Kryptonians. Are you talking about the rumor that Kryptonians can absorb the yellow sun to become stronger? Mindy questioned. This has been a legend in the universe for who knows how long. I'm afraid that the Kryptonians themselves don't believe it. Mindy's attitude is also the attitude of most cosmic people in the universe. Most life in the universe think that Kryptonians are just a race with advanced technology, and regard the former glory of Kryptonians as a legend. Only a few people know that it is not a legend, but a real history. That is not a legend, Mindy. Zero's eyes are firm and his words are clear. I have seen a truly powerful Kryptonian with my own eyes. If I must describe it in words, it is a god on Earth. Hearing Zero's tone, Mindy felt that this was probably not a lie. As an ally, he would also give Zero enough trust. Then how do you want to deal with them? Or a countermeasure? Mindy asked back. The simplest way is to create more artificial kryptonite. Even artificial kryptonite can cause harm to Kryptonians. Zero replied. Ha, interesting. Mindy seemed to have heard the funniest thing in his life. The black helmet suddenly moved twice. Kryptonians are really interesting, they can be restrained by the specialties of their home planet. Anything else? Keep telling me. Listening to Mindy's tone, Jello felt that this guy was like an alien version of Batman, but he didn't care too much. As long as Mindy and he were strong in the fight against Mongo, it would be fine. As for other things, Jello didn't want to care too much, so he continued to say to Mindy. Red solar radiation, yellow solar radiation will strengthen Kryptonians, while red solar radiation will weaken them. The effect will be slightly worse than green kryptonite, but the advantage is that it is much faster to build a large red solar radiation lamp than to build a large amount of artificial kryptonite. Red sun. Mindy suddenly stroked his chin, and then suddenly said, it seems that there was a red sun in the galaxy where those guys used to live. A group of poor guys, actually living in an environment that completely suppressed themselves. As for why the Kryptonians lived in such a bad environment, Jello was not sure, and he didn't dare to be sure. Is it the will of higher level life, or is it the coercion of other races in the universe? There are too many possibilities, and Jello didn't know the whole truth from Clerk. I will provide you with enough artificial kryptonite. Jello said, is there anything else you want to know? No need, I can handle small things myself. Tyrant of Light. Mindy ended the communication jokingly. Although Jello didn't like the nickname of Tyrant of Light, he didn't say anything in the end. After leaving the war world, the cooperation between the two ended. The best result is that the two are scattered in the corners of the universe and never meet again. If there is a day to meet again, Jello just hopes that it is not on the battlefield. Keep training. Seeing Mindy end the communication, Jello turned around and went to the training room, seizing every minute and every second to improve himself. At this time, deep in a palace. Tyrant of Light, he actually has such a title. Mongo leaned on the throne, and his scarlet eyes moved. And below Mongo, Mungana was kneeling on the ground tremblingly waiting for Mongo to speak. Father, what should I do with the Hunter Knight sword? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Zhengmeng's murderous intention. War world. In the deep and dark palace, candlelight danced gently, and on the throne, the dictatorial king chuckled. Burnyo City, heaven, the place where all living beings yearn for, ha ha ha. Mongo suddenly laughed, and he couldn't help slapping his thighs. This sounded like a joyful laugh, but it was so terrifying in Mungana's ears. Mungana clearly remembered that the last time Mongo laughed like this, a full 3 million cosmic people paid their lives for this laugh. The time, Mungana was watching from the side, watching Mongo instruct his men to throw the bodies of those cosmic people into the core furnace of the war world, and finally the core furnace was transformed into resources to supply the operation of the war world. There is only one rule in the war world that is absolute, and that is Mongo's rule. Father, Mungana bravely shouted tentatively, her voice trembling, for fear of disturbing Mongo. After a long while, the wild laughter gradually stopped, and Mongo began to count Jello's actions one by one. Replanning Burnyo City, building an economic system, creating a guard team. Does this guy want to challenge me? Just like my stupid son. Meng's expression became playful and teasing, and there was even a little expectation in his tone. As Meng's most worthy re-employed daughter, Mengana must of course solve problems for Meng at this time, so she asked Meng intimately, Father, do you need me to deal with that traitor? My dear daughter, your thinking is too narrow. Mengo suddenly said to Mengana, and then said, he is a gladiator, of course he should die in the arena. Hearing this, Mengana understood that Mengo wanted Jello to die in the arena in full view of everyone. But there was one thing Mengana didn't dare to say, that was Jello's strength. As the intelligence continued to come, Mengana found that even she couldn't judge Jello's specific strength. Sometimes, Mengana would have the idea of is it only this old thing, Mengo, who can beat the Hunter Knight sword? But Mengana didn't dare to say it. She didn't dare to bet whether Mengo would get angry after hearing this and then take her life to vent. As for his opponent, I have chosen one for him. Mengo's smile became even stronger, and his thick fingers kept stirring on the armrest of the throne. Then he said, let my useless and stupid son be his opponent in the last battle. Doesn't the guy hate hunters? It seems that he can't wait to kill the Hunter Knight sword. In this case, I will fulfill his wish. How about it? My dear daughter. Hearing this, Mengana was overjoyed. She could finally get rid of the most annoying guy, but she didn't show it. She knelt on the cold ground and said respectfully, Father's intention is the best intention. Okay, very good. Meng smiled knowingly, but no matter how you look at it, this smile is so terrible and so hideous. Not long after, Burno City, the top floor of the court tower office area, leaning on the soft rotating office chair, Jello looked at the news on the screen with a trace of worry, and a trace of tension appeared in his heart. It's finally here. Jello knew very well that what he did was unacceptable to Mongo, and sooner or later the two sides would have a complete falling out. Through the notice of this gladiatorial fight, Jello could sense a sense of danger. Building a civilization in the world and making many cosmic people yearn for it, so as to abandon the life on the edge of a night that they lived and died every day. Would Mongo like to see this scene? The answer is, of course not. Who would like to poach people? Mongo will definitely arrange something in this gladiatorial fight to cause extreme disadvantages to himself, and then let the enemy gladiator kill him. Overt conspiracy, blatant open conspiracy. Jello stroked his chin and thought about how to deal with it. Strength, it still needs to be stronger. Jello murmured. Breaking this game is basically the power to defeat the enemy gladiator, but in this game, Jello has to face more than just the enemy. Poison, hidden guns, mines, all kinds of possibilities emerged in Jello's mind. After a moment, dozens of possibilities that might happen appeared in Jello's mind. After thinking of a way to deal with it, Jello immediately left the office area and went to the training room for targeted training. At the same time, in the base of Mongo II, who used to like watching the modified beasts slaughtering everywhere in the base, disappeared. In addition, the power of the entire base was very unstable, the lights flickered, and even the terminal storing important data was flashing from time to time, but the terminal was still making a beeping sound. In the base that seemed to have entered an emergency state, there was a nutrition cabin to maintain energy supply. This nutrition cabin was not big, only 3 meters high, and it was definitely impossible to accommodate modified beasts. At most, it could only accommodate human life forms. The emerald green nutrient solution filled the entire cabin, and the life in the cabin continued to absorb the nutrient solution until all the nutrient solution was absorbed, and a figure slowly appeared. After the nutrient solution was consumed, the hatch opened, and a golden red figure fell from it. Maybe he was a little uncomfortable, and he even staggered a little when he landed, but soon, he adapted to his new body. Squeezing his fist covered with a layer of metal armor, Mongo II felt that he had never been so powerful. He walked to an object with the ability to reflect light and looked at himself carefully. Mongo I's body was covered with a thick layer of armor. The armor was golden red in color and had rough lines. The face of the helmet seemed to be made of some dark green crystals, and the rest was made of gold and red metal, which wrapped Mongo I's entire head. There was semi-cylindrical armor on both sides of the shoulders, which protected his shoulders to the maximum extent. The chest armor was stacked layer by layer, and the defensor was pulled to the highest level. There were modular armor on the abdomen and waist to ensure that the body's flexibility would not be reduced. The thigh armor was very heavy, and a flight module was added to it, giving Mongo II the ability to fly. Mongo II was very satisfied with the armor on his body, so he gave it a name. Let's call it the Hunter Killer Armor. After all, it was created to kill that guy, so let's bring some commemorative nature. Mongo II admired his armor while pulling out a Y-shaped hand axe from the side and playing with it. Ding 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 ding. The beeping sound behind him became stronger and stronger. Mongo II was a little annoyed. He turned around and walked to the terminal. Just as he was about to raise his hand axe to chop the terminal, he saw the message on the terminal. You will fight with the Hunter Knight sword. Be prepared, my son. When Mungo II finished reading the message, Mengana suddenly appeared behind him with a box in her hand. Mengana came up and stuffed the box into Mungo I's hand without saying a word, and then left without saying a word. Mungo II certainly understood what this meant. He put the box at a safer distance and opened a crack slightly. Through the corner of his eye, Mungo II saw what was inside and immediately laughed sinisterly. Ha 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 ha, it turned out to be this Hunter Knight sword. You just wait to die. Chapter Final Fight. War World. 3 weeks later, Burno City Court Tower. In the office area, Jello was ready for battle. He was wearing a tight black combat uniform, with a hunter weapon on his right arm, an ultra badge on his right upper arm, an ultra ring on each hand, and a heavy silver box with unknown contents on his back. Next to Jello was Jello, who was quietly waiting for Jello's instructions. Jello looked at Jello and said in the most serious tone, "This fight is not that simple. You should be prepared for the highest alert as soon as I leave. Do you remember what I said?" "Understood, sir." Jello nodded. Since following Jello, Jello has never seen Jello so serious. In his eyes, Jello is not only serious, but also under pressure. Jello also understands how difficult it is for Jello to establish civilization in the war world, not to mention the biggest obstacle, Mongo. "Sir, you must take care of yourself," Lulu said with concern. His tone was sincere, which made Jello feel warm for the first time in a long time. "Of course." Jello straightened his back and strode towards the balcony. He turned his back to Lulu and raised a thumb to indicate approval. Lulu knew what this meant. Jello had told him that this was a gesture of affirmation. "Sir, you must come back in person and personally lead us to change this world," Lulu thought expectantly. At this time, Jello had also come to the edge of the balcony. He opened his arms, closed his eyes, and slowly leaned forward, letting gravity pull him. In this way, Jello jumped down from the court tower, letting gravity pull him. Even if the strong wind swept across his face, he was not afraid. "Almost," Jello murmured to himself, and then his body suddenly turned and pierced the ground like a sword. Buzz buzz on the ground, a suspended vehicle that was different from all the vehicles in Burno City was heading towards the court tower. When the driver was about to approach the court tower, the radar suddenly sounded an alarm. "Is there an attack in the air?" The driver rubbed his eyes in disbelief, but the alarm on the radar told him that this was not a dream. In mid-air, the air was torn apart, as if a sharp sword was cutting the air. "No, it's me." Jello was quietly suspended in mid-air. He looked at the driver in the suspended vehicle with a calm face and seemed to have no malice. But the driver didn't think so. The sudden alarm just now almost scared him. "Commander." At this time, the residents of Burno City in the square noticed Jello. They called Jello loudly, as if they were welcoming their king. "Commander. We respect you." Someone expressed his gratitude to Jello. With such a leader, all kinds of words of gratitude came to Jello, and the momentum was like a tidal wave, no worse than the gladiatorial fight organized by Mongo. Facing these residents of Burno who were either grateful or admired, Jello just nodded with satisfaction, then stretched out his right hand, spread out his 5 fingers, and then clenched them. As Jello clenched his fists, the residents thought Jello was going to say something, so they quickly shut their mouths and waited quietly for Jello to speak. The huge square suddenly became silent. I know all your feelings. If you admire me, then move towards my ideal and stop doing those unnecessary things in the past." Facing the residents who admired him, Jello used a voice that everyone could hear to convey his thoughts to all the residents. After doing all this, Jello looked at the hovercraft driver who finally calmed down and asked, "I think we can set off." "Yes," the driver replied tremblingly. Then, Jello got on the hovercraft and let the driver take him to the arena. Colosseum. The arena was still covered in bloodstains that could not be washed away, but there were fewer spectators in the stands, making it seem a little quieter than before. Just like before, standing on the ground of the arena, letting the wind wrapped in yellow sand blow across his face, Jello waited for his opponent. Today was different from before. The familiar host disappeared, and no one knew when he died. The audience in the stand did not dare to cheer loudly, and they did not even dare to make a sound, causing the entire arena to be terribly quiet. In this quiet environment, the sound of the fence door opening was too harsh, and the metal fence kept making a clang-clang sound, which was very noisy. At this time, the wind was blowing hard, and the yellow sand blocked the sight of most of the spectators. Only Jello in the arena could see the figure clearly. The figure is humanoid, about 3 meters tall, with a sturdy build. He is wearing a set of gold and red high-tech armor. His face is made of some kind of dark green crystal. He holds a Y-shaped hand axe in his left hand, so he may be left-handed. Finally, I can meet you, Hunter Knight Sword. The figure shouted to Jello. He couldn't wait to move his whole body, and his bones kept making loud noises. Hearing this, Jello didn't feel anything. There were too many people in the war world who wanted to kill him, and he didn't need one more. Jello took down the silver box behind him and slammed it into the ground. Then he raised his right hand, pointed at the other party and said, "Don't talk nonsense, let's fight." As soon as the voice fell, a blue light flashed on Jello's arm, and the Hunter Knight Sword armor covered Jello. Looking at Jello, who was ready for battle, Mongo II, who was wearing the Hunter Killer armor, shrugged and said playfully, "So ruthless? After all, I have been friends with you for a long time, how can you be so cruel? That depends on whether you can make me remember it." This was a big corny for Jello, so he stopped being polite with him. Jello exerted force on his feet, forced the air away, and shot out like a cannonball, attacking Mongo II. "It's really as fast as the intelligence said." Mongo II clenched his right fist slightly, took a deep breath, and then he flashed to Jello's side and shouted at the top of his voice, "I'm like this now just to kill you. Hunter Knight Sword." So fast Jello was secretly shocked, and at the same time used telekinesis to pull himself backwards to get out of the opponent's attack range. "You really used that power." The armor's detection module captured the telekinetic fluctuations and transmitted them to Mongo II. Looking at the information on the helmet, Mongo II smiled, then he calculated the position and came behind Jello again. "I told you, I became like this to kill you." After speaking, Mongo II raised his right arm, which had accumulated enough strength, and smashed it hard towards Jello's spine. Bang! Hunter Killer War World Arena of Mongo II punched Jello's spine armor. A loud noise burst out, as if it was going to tear the entire arena apart. Many spectators covered their ears, fearing that the sound, which was even louder than the explosion of an air-to-ground missile, would damage their hearing organs. Jello, who was hit, reacted quickly. He used his left leg as a support point and kicked out with his right leg like a guillotine. Mongo II didn't want to take the damage, so he retreated and dodged the blow. There's something wrong with this guy's armor. After temporarily repelling the opponent, Jello calmed down and thought about the battle strategy. The punch just now destroyed the back part of the Hunter Knight Sword armor, but Jello himself was not seriously injured. But Jello realized that the punch just now should not have caused such great damage to the Hunter Knight Sword armor. The most proud thing about the Hunter Knight Sword armor is its protective ability. Thanks to Jello's integration of multiple metals from different galaxies without caring about consumption, the armor's defensive power has been raised to an extremely high level. In terms of the survivability of the Hunter Knight Sword armor, Jello was even confident that he could survive the explosion center of a 300,000-ton nuclear bomb. Using the armor's self-checking ability, Jello displayed the fracture of the back armor on his helmet. Looking at the overly regular cracks in the armor, Jello understood it all at once. This was not a regular destruction caused by physical force at all, but a particle-level crushing caused by some special technology or ability. The punch just now destroyed the structure between particles, thus causing damage to the armor. Jello had seen this ability on enemy and was quite familiar with it. Can't fight in close combat. After confirming that the opponent had such a difficult method, Jello decided to fight with this guy. Jello flew into the air and raised his right arm. He threw several golden light bullets at Mongo II. Then he moved quickly in the air, throwing a golden light bullet at Mongo II from time to time, which annoyed Mongo II. Under the helmet, Mongo II curled his lips in disdain. He swung the axe in his left hand to split a light bullet, and another light bullet hit his helmet and exploded, leaving a charred mark on his helmet. "So annoying, like a fly," Mongo II said angrily. In anger, Mongo II raised his right hand and slapped it hard on the ground. A force spread from Mongo Y's palm. Under the effect of this force, the ground seemed to have turned into a pool of water, and began to ripple continuously. And Jello, who was still flying at high speed in the air, suddenly felt a strong gravity. He had long been accustomed to the high gravity environment and ignored it directly. But the next second, the gravity environment of the entire arena suddenly became chaotic. It can be said that even if there were only a few dozen centimeters between them, the gravity would be completely different. Such chaotic gravity forced Jello to be extremely careful. He couldn't fly at high speed. If he flew to an environment with a huge difference in gravity, he would be exposed. Microgravity field jammer? Jello guessed what technology the other party used to change the gravity environment. Unlike Jello, Mongo Y's built-in anti-gravity module was running, allowing him to walk slowly towards Jello as if he was taking a leisurely stroll in the garden. How is it? This is a little gadget I specially prepared for you. Isn't it very powerful? But, there are more powerful things to come. At the same time, the extra brain was running, and the powerful computing power planned an optimal attack route for Mongo II. The body with multiple bionic structures automatically adjusted the angle and ran towards Jello at a very fast speed. The vector thrusters on the legs also accelerated Mongo II from time to time. Facing Mongo Y's attack, Jello had to capture it with his naked eyes, think about it with his brain, and finally react, which would be half a beat slower. Too slow. Mongo II came in front of Jello, he raised his knee, and a spike extended from the armor at the knee, hitting Jello's lower abdomen, intending to give Jello a hard blow. As for Jello, his computing power was completely crushed by Mongo II, so he could only rely on muscle memory to punch Mongo Y's left waist. Bang and bang, two sounds rang out one after another, first Jello's lower abdomen, then Mongo Y's left waist. At this moment, two ripples appeared in the air. Jello only felt a little nauseous, and a sharp pain came from his lower abdomen, and then he retreated back again and again. Mongo II seemed much more relaxed. He stepped back a few steps, leaned over and pulled out the spikes directly, then threw them aside and said, "The high-frequency shock armor-piercing blade cannot completely break your armor, but it should not be uncomfortable, right? After all, I set the shock frequency very high." Microgravity field jammers, multiple armor-piercing weapons, a scanning system that is suspected to be able to detect telekinetic fluctuations, particle destruction technology, motion trajectory calculation system, body adaptive system, auxiliary bionic joints. Just after a few moves, Jello could see how many technologies this guy had. In addition to these technologies, there must be more technologies in this guy's body. Is it a modified humanoid weapon? Jello thought to himself. This guy has so many technologies and his abilities are so targeted that it seems like he was designed to kill him. The situation is dangerous. Jello thinks that the other party may be the second strongest opponent he has encountered since he came to the war world. Keep going. Hunter. Aren't you very strong? Aren't you called the commander of the Remnant Light? Aren't you considered someone who can change the world of war? Come and fight. Looking at Jello, who was obviously being suppressed by him, Mongo II was very happy. He laughed wildly and enjoyed the pleasure of finally being able to step on the object of his disgust. Under the deliberate targeting, Jello's situation became very bad. His mid-range and long-range abilities were almost useless. If he wanted to defeat his opponent, he had to fight the opponent in close combat at the risk of being destroyed by particles. Jello gritted his teeth, condensed his lightsaber, and stepped forward. At this point, this is the only way. Without taking this step, nothing can be done. Finally. Looking at Jello, who was finally about to step into his trap, Mongo Y's mouth under the helmet kept curling up. He turned the hand axe in his left hand and chopped it down according to the best route calculated by the built-in system. Dang, the lightsaber and hand axe collided, making a loud noise, and sparks and golden light spots splashed everywhere, as gorgeous as fireworks intertwined with two colors. Neither of them had any intention of wrestling, so they both stepped back and regrouped their strength. Jello and Mongo II collided with each other and engaged in the most intense close combat. Black Mercy war world in the arena, fists against fists, feet against feet. After hellish training, Jello's close combat ability has been greatly improved. Even when facing Mongo II, who is equipped with a micro-high computing terminal, Jello can make an effective counterattack. In less than 2 minutes, Mongo II and Jello have exchanged countless moves. The movement of his limbs can bring out after images, punches can stir up a gust of wind, and kicks can tear the ground. The huge arena was suddenly full of cracks. Faced with such a situation, Jello knew that if he continued to fight like this, he might not be the opponent of the cyborg on the opposite side, so he deliberately pretended to be physically exhausted and slowly slowed down his punching speed. At first, Mongo II didn't dare to believe that Jello was weak, until Jello's head was hit by Mongo Y's punch, and even the Hunter Knight sword armor helmet had cracks. Mongo II thought he could really take action. Die. The best attack route appeared in his eyes, and Mongo II shouted while stabbing Jello with his right-hand knife. Mongo Y's right hand turned into a knife and stabbed at Jello. Jello raised his left arm and hit Mongo Y's wrist with his forearm. Knowing that the opponent had strong calculation ability, Jello did not dare to stop. He supported Mongo's inability to raise his right hand in a short time and smashed his left fist towards the enemy's chest. If it were not for the fact that Ultra Blast Fist needed a certain amount of time to charge, this punch would have been Ultra Blast Fist. Bang! The punch was hit, just like a landmine was triggered, and several tiny cracks appeared on the chest of the hunter-killer armor. This punch burst out with terrible power, knocking off part of Mongo's internal device, making him faint. Because of the powerful force, Mongo II flew backwards uncontrollably. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Jello chased after him. He used telekinesis to help himself accelerate and almost instantly arrived in front of Mongo II. Yeah! Jello suddenly shouted. Jello clenched his right fist, and blue particles formed coils one after another, floating in front of his fist, like electromagnetic coils. Under the control of telekinesis, these coils fell between Jello and Mongo's head. Every time Jello's fist passed through a coil, the power of his fist would increase, and when his fist landed on Mongo II, the power was fully displayed. Bang! The power of this punch was so great that Mongo II was embedded in the ground 10 meters away. The ground at the arena began to crack, with Mongo II as the center, and there were cracks within a radius of 50 meters. A large amount of white mist spread out from the gap in the armor that Jello had specially opened. Although the power of this coil acceleration attack is great, it also adds a lot of heat to the body and armor. After a slight sigh of the power and shortcomings of the move, Jello ignored his physical fatigue and continued to attack Mongo II. Mongo II was lying in the pit, in a big letter shape. Because he was wearing a helmet, Jello didn't know whether this guy was awake at this time. In the arena, there is a way that everyone knows how to kill the opponent, that is to smash the opponent into pieces. Boom. 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 Punch after punch fell. Jello seemed to have turned into a ruthless punching machine. And when Jello's fist fell, the ground would tremble once, like a series of earthquakes. Even the audience sitting in the front seats could not rest, and the strong tremors forced them to run to the back row. After throwing dozens of punches, Mongo II suddenly laughed. "Thank you for destroying the ground. I saved a lot of bombs, hehe." Hearing Mongo's sudden laughter, Jello thought it was a trick, and with a move of his telekinesis, he retreated to the back. It's too late. Mongo II smiled, and the built-in terminal sent a signal at this time. The bomb buried underground captured this signal, and the unknown object inside the bomb began to heat up. In just a microsecond, all the bombs buried deep in the arena exploded. Boom! A blazing flame burst out of the ground and formed a mushroom cloud over the arena. The explosion that covered the entire arena shaved off a layer of the ground, and in the explosion, Jello had to cross his arms and block himself to protect his important parts from damage. 3 minutes later, the flames of the explosion gradually dissipated, but there was still a lot of smoke and dust that had not dispersed. Crack, crack! Jello's Hunter Knight sword armor appeared in large areas of blab, and the nano coating of the Hunter Knight sword armor fell to the ground with a crack sound. There was also a place where the back armor was damaged. The combat suit naturally could not withstand the high temperature, and part of it fell to the ground, and another part stuck to Jello's skin. The nano coating was completely destroyed, and the damage rate of the armor was 17%, which is acceptable. Jello estimated the damage slightly, then put down his arms and looked for the enemy. In terms of melee ability, I'm indeed not as good as you, even if I had armor, but, here, I have the final say. The voice of Mongo II suddenly came from all directions, which made Jello alert. Boom boom! A loud noise came from underground again, but Jello could clearly tell it was not a bomb. Several black rhizomes pierced the ground and passed by Jello. Plants? Could it be? Looking at the epidermis of the rhizomes, Jello remembered something and felt something was wrong. He memorized the terrain of the arena at this time and then ran in the arena. After that, several more plant rhizomes pierced the ground, and this was just the beginning. After all the rhizomes came to the ground, the main body of the plant really appeared on the ground. The main body of this plant is composed of several black rose-like plants, but the place where the stamen should have grown disgusting tentacles, which makes people feel goosebumps. Do you want to have an appetizer before you defeat me now? Mongo II said sarcastically. You can't be attached to things. Jello gritted his teeth. As soon as he saw the full appearance of the plant, Jello remembered what it was. Black Mercy, a symbiotic plant cultivated by Mongo, once attached to an intelligent life, will cause the intelligent life to fall into an illusion. During this period, the symbiotic life will lose all defenses and will only allow others to slaughter it. If Mongo personally brings Black Mercy, even Superman can challenge it. If you are entangled by Black Mercy, there is only one way to escape, that is to destroy everything you desire most in your heart with your own hands. Jello sent a large number of particles to the Hunter armed forces. This huge Black Mercy is definitely more threatening than the enemy in the distance. What a joke! Jello shouted, and then formed a cross with his hands, and the blue Hunter beam rushed towards the Black Mercy. Boom! The Hunter beam hit the Black Mercy. Under the terrible high temperature, this seemingly huge Black Mercy exploded before it lasted for 5 seconds. Chapter A. Fight between the trapped beast. War World. After destroying Black Mercy, it seemed that the only enemy left on the field was Mongo II. A very powerful weapon, a very correct choice. Mongo II shrugged, then raised his left-hand axe and shouted to Jello, "Next, it's time to enjoy the main course." Boom. As soon as the voice fell, Mongo II broke through the speed of sound and attacked Jello. Although he was injured to a certain extent and his energy was consumed, Jello was not so easy to deal with. At this moment, Jello could no longer care about the consumption. He condensed a not-so-solid lightsaber and stepped forward to fight with Mongo I's hand axe. Clang 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 clang, the lightsaber and hand axe kept colliding, and they collided with each other hundreds of times in a moment. Sizzle the last collision, a violent sound was heard, and visible ripples were rippling in the surrounding air. The lightsaber became less solid, and the hand axe was no longer so sharp. Continuing the wrestling was very disadvantageous to Jello, so Jello's telekinesis burst out and turned into a hammer to hit Mongo II. Mongo II staggered a few steps after being hit by this blow. After stabilizing his body, Mongo II saw Jello, who began to breathe heavily, and then laughed wildly. Ha 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 ha. How is it? How does it feel when that thing attacks? Standing opposite Mongo II, Jello felt that he needed more oxygen at this time. If he didn't breathe, he would be dizzy. But Jello knew his physical condition, and the situation of suddenly needing a lot of oxygen should not happen to him. Could it be? You guessed right, Black Mercy didn't die so quickly. After my special transformation, it has a stronger vitality. Even if it is burned by ultra-high temperature, it can leave spores and pass through the air to find that closest life to parasitize it, and finally slowly restore its original posture. Looking at Jello, Mongo II felt that he had a sure win, and began to explain the reason to Jello on the spot. The full version of Black Mercy can make intelligent life fall into a dream as long as it parasitizes on it. However, the Black Mercy transformed by Mongo II is different. This spore version of Black Mercy has a stronger ability to hide and survive, but it takes a little longer to drag intelligent life into a dream. No, I have to cheer up. Jello shook his head hard, gathered his strength, focused his attention on his heart, and used his powerful heart ability to drive metabolism, trying to expel the spores from his body through metabolism. Even if he couldn't expel the spores, Jello could gain terrible power in a short period of time. Boom boom boom. Suddenly, Jello's heart seemed to turn into a war drum, and there was also a brave warrior in armor beating the drum for the whole army. Yeah. Jello roared, and the impact burst out from his body, blowing away the surrounding sand and gravel, and then flew to Mongo II, and then launched a violent attack. Faster, faster. Facing Zero's fierce attack, Mongo II only calculated the strength and angle, and used the minimum force to block Zero's attack, and he didn't even intend to counterattack. This was to delay time. As long as it was delayed until the Black Mercy on Zero exploded, then Mongo II would naturally usher in the victory. And Zero became more and more anxious, and his moves became more and more fierce. Zero knew too well the terribleness of this Black Mercy. In his memory, Clark would be hit, Supergirl would be hit, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Flash, Aquaman, and other first-line heroes, even Batman with the strongest willpower, would be affected by Black Mercy. So, when Zero knew that he was parasitized by the spores of Black Mercy, he would be so anxious. And unknowingly, fear arose in Zero's heart. Sometimes knowing too much will also bring fear. This fear is the best food for the Black Mercy spores, which makes the black spores continue to grow and grow to affect Zero's mind. Oops, Jello cursed inwardly, because he found that he began to have hallucinations. The two images overlapped, causing him to have double vision, and his movements gradually became slower. It started. Mongo II smiled triumphantly. He first kicked Jello with a sidewhip kick, forcing Jello to stop attacking, and then kicked Jello straight when Jello was defending, kicking Jello away. Jello, who was kicked by Mongo II, flew backwards. Because he had lost most of his body control, Jello was unable to control himself, In the end, he flew all the way to the wall of the arena and embedded deeply into the wall. At this moment, Jello could no longer suppress black mercy and slowly fell into the illusion. At the other end of the arena, Mongo II suddenly became interested. He turned his left-hand axe and decided not to kill Jello so quickly. I really want to know what you were dreaming about, hehe. I really want to enter your dream and destroy everything. Ha 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 ha. Mongo II laughed wildly and slowly approached Jello. At the same time, Mongo was also observing everything through the holographic screen on his throne. When he saw his stupid son starting to act stupid again, he immediately hammered the armrest of the throne and said angrily, "This guy is showing off his stupidity again. I didn't give him black mercy to let him use the arena as a stage like a clown." Although he was indignant at his stupid son's stupid behavior, Mongo was not too worried. Mongo knew the power of black mercy better than anyone else. He had offered black mercy as a tribute to his father. That day, until Mongo chopped off the old guy's head, the old guy didn't resist at all. After that, Mongo used black mercy to kill many powerful enemies. I just don't know what he is dreaming about. Mongo watched all this with amusement. Earth at night, everything was silent. In the quiet and peaceful farmland, the breeze blew through the harvested rice fields, and some snow piled up nearby. A black car drove over the newly repaired road and finally slowly stopped in front of a wooden house with a red roof. A young man got off the car, carrying several bags in his hands. He walked to the door and pushed open the wooden door with wreaths hanging on it. He walked into the warmly decorated house. Two old men were sitting on the old sofa watching TV. The TV was broadcasting the news. The new space capsule studied by Dr. Jello Kent will realize cheap space travel. The price will be even cheaper than most citizens taking taxis. At the time, everyone will be able to travel between the Earth and the Moon easily. This news is sponsored by M78 Technology Co. Limited, Lex Group, Wayne Group, Queen Group, and Palmer Industries. After the news broadcast, the two old men also noticed the young man standing not far away, wearing a light-colored suit. "You are finally back, Jello." Chapter Dream Run. Earth's Marvel town. In the cozy wooden house, Jello's face was full of smiles. Looking at the two elderly people who raised him, he put down the gift in his hand and smiled. "I'm back, Mom and Dad. It's good to be back, it's good to be back." The white-haired old Jonathan Kent looked at Jello, tears appeared in his eyes behind his heavy reading glasses. Beside old Jonathan, Martha Kent, who was wearing a floral shawl on her shoulders, moved her no longer flexible legs and ran towards Jello. "Okay, Mom, you should rest first. Have you taken antihypertensive medicine recently?" Jello flashed to Martha, gently supported her, and signaled the old man not to be so excited. Yes. Martha rubbed her eyes and said, "It's the medicine from your M87 company. It works." "It's M78, Mom." Jello smiled and patted Martha on the shoulder. Old Jonathan, who was standing next to him, hit Jello on the back and said in a seemingly complaining tone, "You bad boy, you don't come back once in a year or two. You're busy outside every day. Your mother can only call you and hang up when she misses you. Let me show you how I'm going to deal with you." Facing the complaints from his father, Jello raised one hand and scratched the back of his head. He smiled awkwardly and then explained for old Jonathan. "Isn't this a help? There are so many things going on in the company. There are also aliens visiting from time to time recently. As the first diplomat of the Earth Union, I'm always busy. And I came back on Christmas Eve, right?" Listening to Jello's words, old Jonathan couldn't help but feel a sense of emotion in his heart and began to think of the day he picked up Jello. On Christmas Eve 25 years ago, late at night just before Christmas, old Jonathan even remembered that it was 11:59 p.m. He and Martha had fallen asleep, ready to welcome Christmas, but Claire suddenly rushed out of the room and brought back a baby still lying in swaddling clothes from the rice field. This baby was later Jello. Old Jonathan and Martha, awakened from their sleep, looked at the baby wrapped in silver velvet and happily adopted the baby born in a rice field. Just like they adopted Claire. In the eyes of the Kents, Jello was like the son of God born in the stable, a gift given to them. After that, Jello also showed extraordinary talent, exactly like Claire. Although Jello never beat Claire in arm wrestling, the Kents never thought about favoring one over the other. The love they poured into Jello and Claire was the same. Today, the child born in a rice field has grown up. With his efforts, M78 Technology Co. Limited was established. The various drugs and technologies developed have benefited countless people, and the increased jobs have helped many people get rid of poverty. He also united all the countries on the Earth, even Atlantis in the deep sea, to form the Earth Union. In addition to these, he is the chief designer of the Universe Development Plan, leading humans to develop the Moon, mine helium, -3, open up Mars and Mercury, and revitalize the entire solar system. All of this made the Kent couple begin to think that Jello is the legendary savior. Don't take everything on yourself. Sometimes you just need to do your best. Looking at Jello, who finally went home, old Jonathan still couldn't get angry. When he thought of the difficulties of his children, he, as a father, could only provide Jello with a warm harbor so that Jello could get a moment of peace when he was tired. Jello, who was busy with work, said, "I will, Dad. There are several young people who were worth training recently. In 2 years, I will be able to step down, and then I can come back to see you more often." "That's good, don't tire yourself out." Martha smiled at the side. "Actually, it's not too tiring for me," Jello responded. Dong dong dong. At this time, a hurried footsteps came. Jello looked at the source of the sound and found that it was his nephew, Jonathan Kent. This year, Jonathan is already 12 years old. The superpowers his father gave him have not yet fully appeared, but he is also very cute now, especially the little curly hair, which is exactly the same as his father. "Uncle Jello, where are my building blocks? You promised to bring them to me." Little Jonathan ran to Jello in a hurry, grabbed the hem of Jello's suit, and said hopefully. Looking at his cute little nephew, Jello pointed and said, "Go ahead, everything you want is in there." "Great. Uncle is the best." Hearing this, little Jonathan smiled so hard that his mouth stretched to the back of his head, and his dark brown eyes inherited from his mother were almost invisible. Little Jonathan happily ran to his toys and couldn't wait to take out all the toys. Every time he took out one, little Jonathan was happier. Wow! A full set of Justice League dolls. There is also a model of the Hall of Justice, an electronic watch signed by the Flash himself, so cool. My favorite Beta Magic Wand. Little Joe counted the toys one by one, and even picked up the Beta Magic Wand himself. The Kents looked at their grandson with joy, and Jello said, "Don't be so anxious, there are still many more to come." As he spoke, little Jonathan took out a large gift box from the pile of toys. The gift box was completely black, and only the largest side had a silver hot logo. When he opened the box, little Joe showed an unprecedented expression. "This is the Batman suit. Uncle really likes me the most." Shao Kao jumped up happily. Perhaps the overexcitement stimulated his superpowers and made him almost hit the ceiling. After landing, Shao Kao immediately took out his mobile phone from his pocket, took a photo, sent it to the number 1 on his list, and attached a message. "Gotham's no. One young master. Batman. This thing is the worst, and you still like him. Obviously Superman is more handsome when he can go to heaven and earth." 2 or 3 seconds later, the other party immediately sent a message. Shao Kao was not convinced and made a video call to argue, but before the arrogant little brat on the other side could speak, Shao Kao found a pair of eyes behind the guy. "Damian. Look behind you." "What?" The other party did not respond, the communication ended. Shao Kao did not understand what was happening on the other side, and his old father also appeared beside him. Clerk, wearing a red plaid jacket, patted Joe on the shoulder and said, "Let them solve their own problems." "And this, the Batman bite doll I brought for Krypton." Jello took out the Batman doll from the pile of toys and squeezed it. There was a dog barking outside the door, and Clerk smiled from the bottom of his heart. Lois stood beside Clerk without knowing when. Here is an explanation of Black Mercy. This plant can cause hallucinations in people. The control method is not mental invasion, but closer to neural control. It can construct a perfect dream through the memory of the parasite. Zmeng, Earth's Smallville town. From time to time, there were bursts of laughter and joy in the farmhouse. A whole family of 3 generations sat around the dining table. The headlights were turned off, and a few red candles were lit as the only light left at this time. The dinner was not very sumptuous. There were only a few home-cooked dishes. The most luxurious one should be the cake that Clerk bought in the city this morning. "Blow up the cake, Jello. Today is your 27th birthday." Clerk motioned Jello to blow out the candles. "Yeah." Jello responded, then stood up and blew out the candles with a light blow. "Great. You can eat the cake." Little Joe couldn't wait to say. "Little Joe." Louis gently scolded Little Joe, "Today is your Uncle Jello's birthday, be careful." "I know, Mom." Little Joe blushed, and noticing his own loss of composure, he quickly buried his head under the table. "Let him eat first." "It's nothing." It's just a cake. Jello smiled, indicating that he didn't care about it. He personally cut a piece of cake and handed it to little Joe. Yeah, we can't eat it anyway, so let's give it to the child. Martha looked at her grandson with a doting look. Really? Little Joe blinked his big eyes and asked. Your uncle and grandma said so. Can it be false? Eat it. Claire touched little Joe's hair and said. With permission, little Joe started to eat the cake. He was at the age when he was interested in sweets. Although the abilities of Kryptonians have not yet fully appeared, his physique is healthier than his peers, and his teeth are much better. With Jello's tacit consent, little Joe ate the most cake. Claire and Jello didn't want to compete with the children. Louise was keeping in shape recently, so she naturally wouldn't eat more. After dinner, Martha threw all the dishes into the dishwasher. The father and son chatted about some things, and Louise was also ready to coax little Joe to sleep. Beep. Suddenly, the sound of a car horn came from a distance. Although it was very light, it was very obvious to Jello and Claire. Go, Jello! Claire encouraged. But Jello Kent, who was so majestic in front of the world and was known as the man of the century, would actually retreat when he heard the sound of a car horn. I'm afraid that even the monarch from Apocalypse could not make Jello show such an expression. Go and grasp your happiness. Claire patted Jello on the back, and then whispered in Jello's ear, if you delay her again, her single-bald brother will fight me to death. With Claire's comfort, Jello mustered up his courage. He straightened his clothes, like a knight who was about to step into the battlefield. After Jello walked away, old Jonathan shook his head and said in a helpless but gratified tone. Jello finally got it. A bright red convertible coupe was parked beside the highway. The driver was wearing a white evening gown that slightly outlined her figure. Her long golden hair was slightly curled, which added a sense of grace to her. Her delicate face and beautiful lips were beautiful enough to attract people of the same sex. So slow. She pouted and complained. Sorry, I'm late, Lina. Jello, who was late, apologized as he stood by the car. It's good that you were here. Although she thought so in her heart, Lina didn't spare Jello much. She looked at Jello and said playfully, 3 days ago, when the Zerg attacked the 7th space station, the superhero Ultraman seemed to have burst out at 98% of the speed of light. Why can't he do it here? I talked to my family for a while. Jello hurriedly explained. He noticed Lina's expression and wanted to change the subject. You'll drive tonight. I drive. Why can't the champion of the Youth Motorcycle Championship and Youth Racing Championship of the Lighthouse Country drive that year? While talking, Lina moved from the driver's seat to the co-pilot. The white evening dress on her body made a rustling sound, which made Jello's heart flutter. In order to hide his embarrassment, Jello hurriedly lowered his head, opened the door, and sat in the driver's seat. He held the steering wheel, adjusted the gear, and stepped on the accelerator slightly. The convertible coupe drove towards the night. The two headlights in front of the car were the only light sources on this country road. Jello glanced at Lina in a white evening dress. Seeing that her shoulders were still exposed, and thinking about the cold weather, he began to look for the button to open the carport, but Lina stopped him. I only want one thing tonight. Don't worry about the other things. Lina put her slender hand on Jello's hand, and the cold touch made Jello's old face blush. Boom 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 boom. Jello's heart beat very fast, and this experienced hero blushed at this time. What a strange feeling. Why is my heart beating so fast and my mind so confused? Why am I thinking about where to travel with her? Jello, calm down. At this time, Jello had to thank the cold wind and this winter night. Under the stimulation of the cold wind, he calmed down more or less. Where are you going? Jello didn't dare to say more. If he talked more, he might stutter. Let's drive wherever the scenery is good. Lin leaned her head on Jello's shoulder. She was not worried about dangerous driving. After all, the person sitting next to her was Ultraman, one of the strongest superheroes of this century. Ultraman's outstanding achievements are well known to everyone on Earth. He and the Justice League have repelled Apocalypse several times, defeated the invasion of cosmic people many times, and fought and won against the three gods in Greek mythology. Let me ask, with such a man next to her, would Lina still be afraid of dangerous driving? You said it. Hearing this, Jello had a goal. He accelerated the car slightly and drove Lina to the place. 10 minutes later, Jello took Lina to a lake. There was an open space next to the lake, and the car just happened to be parked here. There was no pollution here. The lake was like a mirror, reflecting all the stars in the sky. Next to it was a large forest with many small animals living there. The cold wind blew through the leaves and made a rustling sound. Looking up, you can see the beautiful starry sky. The stars reflected each other, forming the most beautiful painting. After pushing open the car door, Jello got out with Lina, looked at the beautiful scenery around, and said, "I used to come here often. As long as I looked at the starry sky here, I would feel very quiet. It's beautiful." Lina looked at the beautiful scenery around and smiled. Looking at such a beautiful Lina, Jello plucked up the courage to stretch out his hand to Lina, performed gentlemanly etiquette, and politely invited, "Beautiful Miss Lina Luther, may I enjoy the beautiful scenery with you?" "Of course, handsome Mr. Jello Kent." Lina made a slight skirt-lifting salute, and then held Jello's hand and strolled together beside this beautiful lake. The 10th update is over, and there will be 4 updates tomorrow. Return the monthly ticket for the extra update. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Zang Earth. Next to the beautiful lake, Jello and Lina were holding hands. They were silent, but their minds were connected at this moment. After walking around, the two returned to the car. They leaned on the front of the car and looked at the stars. "Do you miss home?" Lina suddenly asked. "Home? Do you mean my home planet?" Jello was stunned and almost didn't understand what Lina meant. Lina looked at Jello with clear eyes and asked, "Well, you have been on Earth for so long, have you ever thought about returning to your hometown? It's been almost 30 years, and I have met many people here and left many ties." Hearing this, Jello began to recall everything he had come along the way, and various figures appeared in front of him. "I met my parents, brothers, friends, companions, subordinates here, and, at this point, Jello suddenly got stuck. He looked at Lina for a long time and couldn't say those 2 words. At this time, Jello felt that his brain, which could usually act as a supercomputer, had completely crashed. He had a lot to say, but he couldn't say anything. Looking at Jello's stuttering, Lina laughed and then kissed Jello on the lips. When the soft lips touched Jello's mouth, Jello's brain finally stopped working. He stopped thinking about everything and focused on enjoying everything. Lina took the initiative to hug Jello, fearing that he would leave her again. Under the moonlight, beside the lake, the two hugged and kissed. At this moment, the world seemed to stop, and nothing could stop them. After a long time, their lips parted. Jello and Lina both looked a little messy. Lina was breathing fast, her eyes were blurred, and a few strands of hair were messy on her face. She teased, How is it? Can you say it now?" However, at this moment, Jello decided to follow his deepest desire. He looked at Lina and called his lover's name with his most affectionate and gentle voice. "Lina, I love you. Maybe I've been moved since the first time I saw you, but it's only now that I understand that I've fallen in love with you. I feel like my heart is about to jump out, and I can't control my feelings anymore. Lina, I love you." Jello's words sounded a little incoherent, but Lina was very happy to hear them. Boom. Suddenly, there was a loud noise in the sky in the distance, and one after another gorgeous fireworks bloomed in the sky, reflecting the entire sky brightly. Even the park with the most flower varieties did not have such a beautiful scene. The fireworks lasted for a long time, and finally, the fireworks formed 2 names in the sky, Jello's and Lina's names. "Is this the work of those guys?" Jello immediately guessed who made the fireworks. Lina smiled, "Let me guess, the leader should be Dick, right?" As she spoke, a folded piece of paper floated down from the sky. Jello reached out to catch it, and after opening it, he saw a series of names. This event is organized by Dick Grayson, Don Troy, Kona Kent, Roy Harper, Wally West, Victor Stone, Billy Batson, Jason Todd, Tim Drake, Damian Wayne, Garfield Gare Logan. Seeing such a long list of names, Jello was very moved. These guys, Jello's nose twitched, and he felt like tears were about to fall. "But it's beautiful, isn't it?" Lina smiled. Jello joked, "Reduce their training workload next time." "Don't be ridiculous, they gave you fireworks, and you still want to punish them." Lina chuckled. "But I'm curious, where do they get the money?" Jello frowned and thought about it. "Do I need to think about it?" Lina replied. At this moment, in the Batcave in Gotham City, Damian's hands and feet were tied up, and he was hung upside down on the ceiling. From time to time, there were bats resting on him, but even so, Damian did not give up struggling. Batman's face turned very dark as he watched the fireworks bursting on the Batcomputer. Finally, it's done, the two of them. Behind Batman, Wonder Woman looked relieved. What should I do if I want to be the godfather of their two children? Flash said while eating potato chips. Green Lantern pushed Flash with his elbow and said, the godfather should be the greatest Green Lantern. Looking at the two funny people, Alfred calmly handed Batman a cup of black tea. At the same time, in Metropolis, a big bald man was grabbing his non-existent hair and crying, while crying and insulting Jello. If you are sorry to Lina, I will definitely take your life. Jello Kent. The big bald man roared. Looking back at the lake, Jello and Lina were enjoying this wonderful scene. They didn't say much, just holding hands in the wind. After a long time, Lina said, it would be great if it could always be like this. Yes, everything is so beautiful. Jello replied. At this time, Jello is almost at the peak of his life. Family, love, friendship, career, there is nothing he can't get. If there is a happiness ranking list, Jello will be at the top. But, is all this true? Jello suddenly thought. He recalled everything in the past. No matter what it was, he went through it smoothly, until now, he found a problem. Is all this true? When the thought came, Jello couldn't help thinking about it, and the fragrance of Lina entered his nose, which made him stop thinking. Maybe this is the best situation. Jello slowly immersed himself in this gentle place. Here, I'm one of the strongest superheroes, a hero of mankind, and the lover of Lina Luthor. What's wrong with that? Yes, I relied on my understanding of this world to defeat powerful enemies many times and save the Earth, but why didn't those really powerful enemies appear? Black Death Emperor, Anti-Monitor, Three Palace Demon, Laughing Bat, Paper Chair, Hand of the Void, why didn't these really powerful enemies appear? Is it because they are not interested in the Earth? Impossible. According to fate, they will definitely fight against me, and I will definitely fight against them. What if they didn't come? Why? Is it because this is not the world they like? But this is the Earth, boom. There seemed to be a loud noise in his mind, and Jello completely saw the truth of this world. This is a pocket universe, or a fantasy. But everything here is too good. Jello feels that he can't extricate himself, he has everything he wants. But this is not his universe, so are his real relatives waiting for him? Does everything that is too smooth really belong to him? Am I being played as a puppet by some powerful person? Yes, what does it matter if all this is beautiful? This is not created by me after all, no matter how beautiful it is, it does not belong to me. Jello. Lina called softly from the side, her love was so deep and tender that she almost made Jello fall into the gentle land again. But Jello has set his goal, and he can never change it. Chapter Broken Dream. Earth beside the beautiful lake, Jello suddenly jumped off the hood of the car and slowly walked into the lake. Lina was puzzled and called out repeatedly. Jello. What are you going to do? Hearing Lina's call, Jello still walked towards the lake without looking back. He had already walked into the lake, and the cold lake water had already flooded his ankles. Lina was very confused as she watched Jello gradually walk into the lake. She was very puzzled, but she had a premonition that if she didn't do anything, Jello would leave her forever. Don't leave me, Jello, answer me. Lina chased after him directly, regardless of the fact that she was still wearing a pair of 5-centimeter high heels. When Jello found that Lina had caught up with him, his eyes were calm, and he looked at her with a calmness that Lina had never seen before. This calm look scared Lina. Lina, I'm not from this world, and this world is also fake, are you surprised? I want to. Jello looked at Lina calmly, but he said words that Lina couldn't understand. Although she was puzzled, Lina's love for Jello prevailed. She looked at Jello and said affectionately, well, even if you are not from this world, my love for you will not change. Even if this is a fake world, I still love you. Thank you, Lina. As I said, I have to return to the real world. If this world still exists after I leave, then when the morning star shines in the western sky, a beam of light will fly into the universe. That is me. Goodbye, Lina. Although he knew that the world was fake, Jello's feelings were not fake. What he said to Lina in front of him was all true feelings, without a trace of adulteration. Listening to Jello's sudden farewell, Lina shed tears, and Jello's heartstrings were hurt. But Jello knew that this did not really belong to him, no matter how beautiful it was, it would not have any effect. I'm sorry. Thousands of words turned into the simplest sentence. Jello knew that this world was false. He did not need this kind of illusory beauty. What he should do is to return to the world that truly belonged to him and use his own fists to fight for a future that was exactly the same, no, even better. What would it matter if he just ensured the peace of the solar system? He should become stronger and fight for a more vast world. Jello closed his eyes tightly. When he opened them again, the surroundings turned pale. He stood on the wide ground and looked around. At this time, a voice sounded. "You can go back to the beautiful world, and you will have everything." "No, that does not belong to me." Jello shook his head, "And, you gave too little." "What?" The voice suddenly became louder, and Jello was ready to attack. The 5 fingers of his right hand clenched into a fist, and his arm moved back. Particles, telekinesis, muscle strength, all the power gathered on Jello's right fist. This was exactly Ultra Blast Fist. Boom. A punch was thrown. No longer needing to charge. Although the power was weak, this punch was stronger and faster than the previous punch. Crack, the surrounding space was like glass falling to the ground, and it shattered piece by piece until the entire space was completely shattered. Countless pieces of debris passed by Jello's eyes, and when the last piece of debris fell from Jello's eyes, he returned to the real world. After returning to the real world, Jello felt pain. Very painful. Especially the back, which was a heart-piercing pain. Jello was a little confused, and he found himself lying on the ground, as if there was something on his back, and something in front of him seemed to be approaching rapidly. Although he was still a little uncomfortable, Jello still stretched out his right palm and grabbed the thing. When Jello grabbed the thing, a voice rang out. "How is it possible?" A cry of surprise suddenly came. "What's impossible?" Jello subconsciously responded, raised his right foot and kicked, forcing the guy who wanted to attack him back, and then stood up from the ground with a somersault. Black Mercy could no longer affect Jello, and the rhizome fell down as if it had lost its vitality, and finally, the whole plant fell to the ground. After stretching his muscles, Jello pinched something on his back, and then pulled it out. Blood flowed out, and a blood-stained hand axe with some muscle tissue appeared in his hand. It was fun to fight. Jello threw away the hand axe, and tilted his head to look at his enemy. "You can break free from the Black Mercy." Mongo Y's face under the helmet became very ugly, but the next second, he calmed down. "I just chopped the hunter so many times, threw the hunter countless times, and punched him so many times that I couldn't count them. The hunter must be at the end of his strength at this time, that's right. And I'm wearing armor specially designed for him. I will definitely win." Thinking of this, Mongo II was no longer afraid, and even had enough confidence. "What can you do? This fight is destined to be won by me." Mongo II pointed at Jello and shouted confidently. "That's not certain." Although he was a little weak, Jello felt that he had never felt so good. He looked at Mongo II wearing the hunter-killer armor and said, "Your armor should be specially made for me, right? In that case, I will completely destroy your armor and you." Ultra Blast Fist. Yeah. As soon as the voice fell, Mongo II was greeted by a full-strength Ultra Blast Fist. Jello could actually use the Ultra Blast Fist, which was originally a close combat technique, as a long-range attack. Didn't his strength become weaker? When Jello swung this Ultra Blast Fist, even he himself did not notice that a pattern of red, blue and gold intertwined appeared on his skin. What? Mongo Y's pupils shrank. In his calculations, Jello could not possibly burst out such a strong force, so he did not mobilize more physical resources. Crack! The force of the fist burst out on the hunter-killer armor, causing it to shatter. A piercing pain immediately swept through Mongo Y's brain. It's not as powerful as before. Jello looked at his fist, then looked at the armor information, and found that the internal structure was damaged by the recoil force. TSK, is the internal damage so severe that I can only throw one last punch? It seems that this guy did a lot of good things while I was unconscious. While Jello was unconscious, Mongo II destroyed Jello's armor many times and used his particle destruction technology. Fortunately, it was the Hunter Knight sword armor, otherwise other armors might not have such defensive power. This punch will completely end you. Jello shouted softly, and then turned into a meteor and flew out. Mongo Y's built-in terminal felt that Jello was not fast enough at this time, and did not mobilize enough resources to calculate, so Mongo II was hit by another punch, an Ultra Blast Fist. This punch completely shattered the hunter-killer armor on Mongo II, and Jello's Hunter Knight sword armor could no longer bear the burden and was removed by Jello. The armor was broken, and Mongo II, who was controlling the armor through neural connection, was in excruciating pain, while Jello felt extremely refreshed. Ace of the universe. War world in the arena, Mongo II was knocked down by Zero's punch, and the whole person curled up on the ground, like a caterpillar preparing to spin a cocoon. The control method of the hunter-killer armor is somewhat unique. In order to have sufficient reaction speed and mobility, Mongo II directly embedded the armor into the skin, turning it into an artificial organ. When this organ was destroyed, the pain was no less than that of a male on Earth who had his reproductive organ kicked and exploded dozens of times in a row. Mongo II let out a huge wail. On Zero's side, after Zero swung an Ultra Blast Fist, the internal bearing capacity of the Hunter Knight Sword armor also reached its limit, and a large number of short circuits occurred inside the armor. Your mission is over. Zero lowered his head and whispered, and then forcibly put away the Hunter Knight Sword armor that had accompanied him for so long. Sizzle sizzle, after changing back to the Hunter armor, white smoke continued to float out from its surface. Although I don't really want to use it, I still have to use you, my trump card. Zero clenched his fists, and the two Ultra rings shone brightly. In a corner of the arena, the long silver box that Zero had inserted into the ground at the beginning suddenly vibrated, and the dust covering its surface was shaken off. Without Oi's support, Zero could not guarantee that he would not be disturbed by others when using the transmission system, so whether it was Hunter Knight Sword or Taro, Zero chose to use nano-storage technology. However, nanotechnology was not added to the Ace armor at the beginning of its design. To add nano-storage technology to the Ace armor, Zero needed to invest a lot of time. In order to save time and to be able to put the Ace armor into battle as a combat force, Zero created a short-distance transmission cabin. This short-distance transmission cabin can only transmit armor within a radius of 5 kilometers, which is far inferior to the free transmission within the Milky Way that the ultralight can do, but the advantage is that it is very difficult to be interrupted. Zero opened his arms slightly, clenched his fists, and then exerted force suddenly, making his fists touch each other in front of his chest. The two rings also touched at this time, and the transmission system was triggered. White light lit up, and the Ace armor was transmitted to Zero. With the click sound of the mechanical structure, one piece of light armor after another was assembled on his body until the helmet completely covered his head. Zero turned his neck and sighed. It's a long-lost feeling, Ace. On the other side, Mongo II barely endured the severe pain. He climbed up from the ground with his hands and feet. Dust covered his body. Outsiders could not tell this was Mongo II who was ambitious enough to replace his father. That is, the armor he used before. Mongo II remembered that he had seen the Ace armor in the battle video. It was the armor that Zero wore when fighting with Cyborg No. 1 and Beast Head 4, but the armor that Mongo II saw today was more complete. After Zero adjusted the structure and wavelength of the phantom particles to be the same as those of the Meclean particles, the oval optical eyepiece of the Ace armor lit up. You should be a killer under Mongo or Mongo II, right? What a terrible transformation technology, the armor and the skin are connected together. Zero slowly converged the particles that overflowed from the armor and cast an extremely aggressive gaze on Mongo II. However, Zero did not see Mongo Y's identity. What? Mongo II straightened his back, feeling that Jello's work had greatly stimulated him. He stretched out his hand without a trace of skin, and his flesh and nerves were exposed to the air, pointed at Jello, and said with a trembling body, I'm Mongo II. Mongo II, who's no. 1, no. 12, and no. 19 biological transformation weapons were taken away by you. Impossible. The particle generators on both wrists were activated, and Jello walked towards Mongo II and retorted, how could guys like Mongo and Mongo II use biological transformation technology on themselves, especially this seemingly powerful but with great shortcomings of transformation technology? From Jello's tone, he might really not know that the enemy opposite was Mongo II. Hearing this, Mongo II was so angry that he didn't even know the biggest enemy he had always thought of. When he thought of this, a stream of blood gushed out of Mongo Y's throat. Then, the angry Mongo II lifted all restrictions, turned on all the mechanical organs in his body, and the micro-engines in his body began to overclock to provide him with more power. Hunter Knight Sword. Die. In anger, Mongo II burst out with terrible power, and a loud bang appeared. Small jets were added to Mongo Y's elbows, calves, and shoulder blades. Under the acceleration of these jets, Mongo II broke the speed of sound within 3 seconds. Want to play with speed? Okay, I'll help you. Under the helmet, Jello raised his eyebrows, and his own flying ability and the flight system of Ace armor were activated at the same time. With a bang, Jello broke the sound barrier faster than Mongo II. After the hunter-killer armor was destroyed, the microgravity field disruptor was also destroyed, and the gravity of the arena returned to normal again. The next moment, Jello and Mondo II turned into two red meteors, constantly colliding in the arena, and loud bangs rang out in the arena. The audience outside the arena could only see two red lines interweaving, as if an artist was creating a peerless painting. After dozens of loud noises, Mondo II and Jello separated after a collision, and both fell to one end of the arena. Damn it. Mondo II bit his tongue, his hands and legs shaking uncontrollably. Without the power of the hunter-killer armor, Mondo II had to directly use his body to fight Jello's ace armor. Every contact with the Iron Fist was a challenge for Mondo II. Jello seemed very relaxed. The energy core of the ace armor provided him with some energy. With the energy replenishment, his physical strength was also restored. Is it the next round? Jello hooked his finger at Mondo II and challenged him. After getting rid of Black Mercy, Jello felt as if he had been sublimated. Although his strength had not changed, he could use it more easily than before. Jello felt that he only needed 1/10 of his strength to do what he had previously needed all his strength to do. Hunter Knight Sword. Mondo I's eyes were fierce. He ignored the error messages coming from multiple systems in his body and ran wildly again. He kept changing positions to confuse Zero and broke the sound barrier 15 seconds later. Just in time, but I'm not Hunter Knight Sword now, but Ultraman. Zero got ready and didn't prepare for supersonic movement, because even if he didn't use any computing modules in the armor, Zero could see all the trajectories of Mondo II. Zero threw a powerful punch on the path that Mondo II had to pass. Bang! Metalium rays whirled after the loud noise. Jello felt the touch of his fist hitting his flesh, and then he saw Mondo II flying backwards. The calculation ability of this armor is so fast. After being hit, this thought came to Mondo I's mind. After flying more than 100 meters in the arena like a rag, Mondo II rolled on the ground for several rounds before getting up from the ground in a mess. This guy, Mondo II wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, then spit out his few internal organs and staggered to his feet again. Next, I will end you completely. Jello's voice suddenly sounded behind Mondo II. Mondo II exclaimed, "What?" Without waiting for Mondo II to turn around to fight, Jello kicked Mondo II in the middle with a low sweep, and then immediately followed up with an uppercut that hit Mondo I's lower back. Instantly, the sound of bones breaking could be heard, and then the force of the punch exploded, sending Mondo II high into the air. Bang! Jello stepped on his feet, and turned into a sharp sword that soared into the sky. He came to Mondo I's top at a speed that was difficult for a high-speed camera to capture. Aiming at Mondo I's chest, he raised his right foot, and swung down with his right heel like a guillotine. Even the air was making a wooing sound under this blow, and Mondo II, who was kicked in the chest, felt that his soul was about to leave his body. After rising into the air at high speed, he was forcibly knocked down by a heavy blow. The terrible centrifugal force he endured in the middle almost made him lose consciousness. Boom! After hitting the ground heavily, the loud noise and severe pain made Mondo II very sober, and the intense pain made him even more angry. Damn it! I'm so embarrassed. Mondo II was so angry that he raised his right arm and hammered the ground several times. Tears of unwillingness slid down from the corners of his eyes. Unwilling, resentful, angry, a lot of negative emotions prompted Mondo II to stand up again. He knew that he would die in the hands of Jello, but he resented it. He hated Jello, hated this world at war, and hated everything. The ugly eyes stared at Jello standing in the sky, and the skinned lips opened, questioning Jello in the sky. Are you ready? If not, then be prepared to win and survive with the resentment of us losers, because this is the fate of the winner who survives the battle. These extremely heavy words did not stir up the slightest ripple in Jello's heart. He slowly descended from the sky with light movements. He looked at Mondo II, who was at the end of his strength and would die naturally even if he did not take action. He said firmly, "You said that the winner will survive with the resentment of the loser, but so what? I will still continue to fight until the day my life ends. As for you, be prepared to report my name to the god of death. And now, you'd better be like those modified beasts." Without any sense of pain after the last word fell, Jello began to condense metalium particles. The red, green and yellow light covered the particle generator on his right wrist and slowly extended, finally covering his entire right hand. What a terrible temperature. Jello glanced at the temperature on the information panel, secretly sighing at the temperature of the body when using the light ability, and then quickly swung his upper body, and the energy was accumulated at this time, and his arms swung forward to form an L shape. The next second, the three colors of red, blue, and yellow intertwined together, turning into a three-color rainbow, shooting towards Mondo II. Midlium Ray. Jello shouted softly, and increased the energy output, making the power of Midlium Ray 3 points stronger. At this moment, Mondo II felt that time was infinitely stretched, and he watched with his own eyes as Midlium Ray approached him little by little. Ultraman. Even if I die and every cell of mine is destroyed, I will not let you go. And before my resentment is completely cleared, I will crawl back from the deepest part of the Dead Kingdom. Remember this. Mondo II uttered his last curse. The next second, the Midlium Ray hit his body. The high temperature made his cells expand, and the implanted machinery and metal began to melt gradually. At this moment, the biological body and the machinery merged at the physical level. The complete fusion of machinery and biology, this may be the scene that Mondo II wants to see the most, right? But he probably doesn't have this opportunity, because, boom. When Mondo IE's body could not withstand the Midlium Ray, his body exploded, and countless fragments flew around in the air, flying all over the arena. It's finally over. Wiping off a little debris that fell on the optical eyepiece, Jello said with relief. It's been beaten so badly, it should be dead, right? Seeing Mondo II being smashed to pieces, the audience was extremely shocked. At this moment, the strongest gladiator in their eyes was Jello. Regardless of whether there were cheers or not, as if it had nothing to do with him, Jello found his own teleporter, carried it on his back, and then left the arena. Outside the arena, Luluo personally drove the hovercraft to wait for Jello's return, and when Luluo saw Jello for the first time, he shed excited tears. Congratulations, sir, you won again. Yeah. Jello nodded, then came to Luluo and said in a voice that only Luluo could hear. Hurry back to Burno City, you can't stay here for long, and convey my order. As long as there are vehicles, lives, and aliens that appear within 100 kilometers outside Burno City, they can be used as targets for attack. Do you understand? Sir? Could it be? Luluo's eyes widened, because he guessed a very terrifying possibility. That old guy can't sit still anymore, hurry up. Jello urged, then grabbed Luluo, took 2 steps at a time and jumped onto the hovercraft, and ordered the driver to return to Burno City at the fastest speed at all costs. At this moment, in the luxurious palace, Mondo looked at the screen of his son turning into fireworks and twitched his mouth, lamenting. My poor son, but you also give me a reason as a father, a reason for a father to avenge his child. After the voice fell, Mondo stood up from the throne, waved his hand, and ordered Mengana, who had been kneeling below. My dear daughter, now, you immediately take my order to command the army. I want to see Burno City completely disappear. Do you understand? Understand, my respected father. Mengana replied excitedly, and then immediately stood up to dispatch the army for Mongo. She has been waiting for this day for a long time. Tomorrow will also be 4 updates, and the protagonist will soon awaken the power to transform into a giant of light. According to the current progress, the War World chapter will end on Friday and enter the next chapter. Chapter War is about to begin. War World 90 kilometers outside the city of Burno, the wind and sand are endless, and countless war weapons form one position after another. There are hundreds of positions in the northern defense line alone. Each position has 64 close defense guns, 72 small electromagnetic rail guns, 36 medium-caliber electromagnetic rail guns, 6 large superplasma rail guns, 108 missiles, various kinds of terrible weapons, together with guards and drones, form one position after another. Thanks to Jello's phobia of insufficient firepower, under his day and night production, the entire city of Burno has stored a lot of weapons, and there is only one purpose, to kill all of Mongo's troops. Highest alert, the commander actually issued such a terrible order. In a battlefield command room on the northern front, Maniz, who had been promoted to a battlefield commander and obtained the colonel level enhanced armor, was thinking in his position. Highest alert, this is an order known to everyone in the guard team. Once this order appears, all members must immediately abandon everything and rush to the front line. The young battlefield commander stood up from the command chair. He looked at the red dots that appeared on the big screen and had a plan in mind. Communicate with the other party first. If they still don't retreat and enter the specified range after the communication, then open fire directly. Maniz issued orders according to the rules of the guard team's training. In the command room, several communicators immediately started to contact the targets that were constantly moving towards Burno City. Please answer, please answer. If you move forward again, we will open fire. Please go back. Hiss. No response, only sharp and piercing sounds echoed in the command room. Seeing that the other party was so ignorant, Manish shook his head, and then he was no longer merciful. As the highest commander in this battlefield, he waved his hand and ordered, "Launch 108 missiles, all other combatants are ready for battle, adjust weapons, turn on energy shields, detect the maximum power of the system, and the communication personnel ensure that the internal network is normal, the war is about to begin." At this moment, Jello, who had returned to the core tower, covered the entire top of the tower with yellow sunrays. All the yellow sunrays were overloaded, making the entire room full of golden color. Jello was naked, revealing the perfect muscle lines of his upper body. The light shone on Jello, providing energy for Jello. Sizzle sizzle sizzle, because the overload exceeded 1000%, although Jello recovered in the shortest time, these yellow sunrays could no longer bear it and exploded one after another. After the light was damaged, Jello picked up the black combat uniform placed aside and put it on, zipped it up, put on the gloves, stepped on the combat boots, put on the mask, and put on the ultra ring and ultra badge. Beep, a slight sound came from the office area. Jello followed the sound and found that it was the sound from the office terminal, so Jello opened the office terminal and checked the information. Enemy scouts have been discovered on the northern front. Mongo, you are finally here. Looking at the information on the terminal, Jello stretched his muscles and then returned. The enemy has not launched the first round of attack yet, continue to maintain the highest alert. Jello sent a message to all battlefield commanders. Then, Jello came to the work area, he adjusted the energy supply to the highest, and the energy of the entire core tower was supplied to the work area. The blue light on the core terminal screen was reflected in Jello's eyes. His fingers brushed across the virtual keyboard composed of more than 360 keys. Jello said confidently, "Let's play information warfare with you first." After the voice fell, Jello began to operate quickly. At this moment, under the blessing of the energy of the entire core tower, the core terminal and the auxiliary array made a tornado-like roar, and a large amount of information flow poured out of the core tower. They were like invisible ghosts. Under Jello's command, they would swing the most deadly sickle of the enemy at a critical moment. 30 kilometers above the ground, there was a 17-kilometer-long aerospace warship, and next to this warship, there were dozens of others. Mengana was in high spirits. She looked at her busy subordinates and felt a great sense of accomplishment in her heart. She even began to imagine a possibility. It would be great if the bold thing could be killed by the hunter. It would be best if they died together, Mengana thought unrealistically. Although the reconnaissance drones and reconnaissance troops sent out had not received any news so far, she was not worried. It's not like no one in the war world has thought about overthrowing them, but those people turned into a wisp of green smoke in the end. It's not right to say that, the smoke from some cosmic people is still purple. Report to Your Highness, our warships are about to enter the combat distance, please issue an order. The deputy reported to Mengana. Finally arrived. Mengana smiled cruelly, and then ordered, all warships will fire 3 rounds of salvos first, and the 1st to 3rd units will be on standby. After the salvos are over, break through the opponent's northern front. Received. After receiving Mengana's order, the deputy immediately conveyed it to all levels. And somewhere in this aerospace battleship, Minky, who was hiding in the dark, held an eavesdropping tool in his hand and transmitted all of Mengana's communications to Jello. Because there were no spies, it was difficult for Jello to obtain the movements of the Mengo army, but fortunately he had Minhy on his side. Minhy could shuttle in the dark and was the best candidate for a spy. It was very difficult to guard against Minhy without knowing it. Hiding in the dark, Minhy was very safe. After he groped all the way and found a submachine room, he stopped. The next step is to follow what the guy said and plug this thing into an internal interface. After sneaking into the submachine room, Minhy took out a thing that looked a bit like a USB flash drive from his dark armor, found an internal interface, and inserted it. Waited. Red light flashed on the USB flash drive until it stopped at a stable blue light. Minhy then left with a sense of relief. After Minhy left, an alarm suddenly sounded inside the battleship, and the entire command room became tense. Looking at the control terminal with snowflakes flashing continuously, Mengana's face sank and she asked in confusion, "Isn't the battleship system an internal network? How could it be attacked by an electronic virus? Is there a spy? Quick, shut down the main system and start the backup system." After receiving Mengina's order, several cosmic operators hurriedly shut down the main system, but their opponent was Jello, and the powerful opponent made them seem a little overwhelmed. However, they had the home advantage. After burning countless brain cells, the main system was shut down and the backup system was activated. However, on the battlefield, even if it was only a moment, it was enough to change the situation. On the ground, hundreds of orange-blue plasma railguns mixed with spacium particles fired at the warships. Chapter War World. With the cooperation of Minhe and Jello, the troops led by Mengina not only exposed their coordinates, but also lost a very valuable advantage. Hundreds of spacium plasma railguns fired at the same time. In an instant, hundreds of orange-blue beams shot from top to bottom. The orange-blue beams were like angry dragons, tearing through the air, making terrible roars, and finally bombarding the warships one after another. Boom, boom, boom. Violent explosions continued in the sky, and even the soldiers standing on the ground could see clouds of smoke. In one of the bases, report, the commander's total hit rate for this round of shooting is 91.3%. The operator reported to Manes. Very good. Manes nodded, and then ordered, all main guns recharge and prepare for the second round of salvos. Before the recharging is completed, the small and medium electromagnetic guns keep firing and do their best to annihilate the enemy. Received. The operator quickly passed on Manes's order, and then the small and medium electromagnetic guns began to intersperse firing, and large and small electromagnetic beams flew towards the sky, making Mengina overwhelmed. In the bridge, Mengina, who was still calm despite the shaking of the warship, issued an order. Open the energy shield, separate the fire area, remove the restrictions on all weapons, and fire. The other cosmic people were not as relaxed as Mengina. They could still calmly give orders while the warship was shaking violently. They needed a very short reaction period. But even if this reaction period was short, it was enough for the small and medium electromagnetic guns of the guard team to give them a round of firepower interspersed. A group of cosmic people reluctantly turned on the weapon system, and all the weapons that could be used on the warship were activated, firing at the positions on the ground. But Mengina and his men lacked coordinates, which meant that most of the attacks could not even land on the guard positions. Even if they landed on the guard positions, they would be blocked by the energy shield. Deep inside the battleship, standing in the cabin that was shaking violently, Minnie was folding his hands over his chest as if nothing had happened, and said playfully, "Good fighting power, enough to kill these small fish, but you have to know that the victory of this battle depends on us." After speaking, Minnie slowly dived into the darkness, and 3 seconds later, he appeared in the shadow of a stone on the ground. The battle continued. With the first move and the blessing of excellent weapons, the guard team had an absolute advantage, and Mengina's fleet had almost no power to fight back. At this time, the battle was also taking place on the other 3 fronts, but compared with the advantage of the northern front, the situation on the other 3 fronts was very bad. About half an hour later, on the top floor of the core tower of Burno City, looking at the 3 red signs of signal loss that appeared on the terminal, Jello's face was very gloomy. 3 signal loss means that the 3 fronts have all fallen. According to the report, the casualties of the guards are also very heavy, and the loss of weapons is countless. The most terrifying thing is that they are facing only one enemy, Mongo. Within half an hour, Mongo destroyed Zero's east, south, and west front one after another, leaving only the north front. Mongo. When Zero thought of Mongo's terrifying power, his heart became complicated. The Ultra badge was still worn on his right upper arm, and the repaired Hunter Knight sword armor was also transformed into Hunter armor and worn by Zero on his right forearm. After making all the preparations, Zero put on the ace armor, left the core tower, and flew towards the direction of the northern battlefield. While Jello was still on the road, Mongo had already arrived at the northern front. The giant with scarlet eyes looked around and said with an evil smile, "The warm-up is finally over. How long can you hold on?" As soon as the voice fell, all the electromagnetic cannons fired at Mongo, and the overwhelming orange-blue beams illuminated the surroundings, while Mongo stood there quietly. Boom. The beams fired by countless electromagnetic cannons produced a chain reaction, causing a terrifying mushroom cloud to rise from the ground. The electromagnetic cannon mixed with spacium particles is much more powerful than normal electromagnetic cannons, and the explosion is also more powerful, and there will be a mushroom cloud similar to a nuclear explosion. It's all hit, but why am I so scared? In the command room, Manes covered his chest. For some reason, he always had an ominous premonition. Especially after seeing the news that the other 3 fronts had all collapsed. All soldiers and non-commissioned officers retreat. Only officers can participate in the next battle and convey my orders. Man is ordered while biting his teeth. The fleet in the sky is not to be feared, but Mungo is the only one who cannot be underestimated. Received. The operator replied. You don't have to stay, all retrieve back to the headquarters, this battle is not something you can handle. Jello's voice suddenly came from the command room. Not only the position where Menes was, but other positions also received Jello's order. Even if they were unwilling in their hearts, no one disobeyed Jello's order. Everyone retreat. Menes roared unwillingly, his heart was full of unwillingness, but he had to obey the order from Jello. In the sky, Jello, wearing ace armor, accelerated and rushed into the mushroom cloud. The complex situation in the mushroom cloud could not affect him. Soon, Jello found Mungo's figure. Mungo put his hands behind his back, looking very leisurely, without even a bit of dust on his body. After seeing Mungo, Jello did not alarm him. He silently crossed his hands, and the energy continued to condense, and a terrible guillotine gradually took shape. On the ground, Mungo yawned in boredom. Retrieve now. I haven't had enough fun yet, this won't do, since you want to run, then I'll play hide and seek with you, ha ha ha. Now. Above the sky, Jello swung the guillotine without hesitation, aiming at Mungo's head. Sensing the danger come in, Mungo couldn't help but be alert, and when he saw the curved horizontal guillotine, his heart tightened. Almost subconsciously, Mungo was about to dodge, but at this moment, a black shadow emerged from the ground. I won't let you have this chance. Minhee held the sword with both hands and pierced Mungo's feet at the same time, fixing it on the ground. Mungo was furious, you damn maggot. Before he finished speaking, the horizontal guillotine slashed across Mungo's neck, and a very scary gap appeared, and a lot of blood flowed out. With this nearly perfect sneak attack, did Jello and Minhee really kill Mungo? Did they really succeed? Chapter Battle Mungo War World. In the large mushroom cloud created by hundreds of specium electromagnetic cannons, Jello and Minhee launched a sneak attack on Mungo. They cooperated perfectly and successfully hit Mungo with the horizontal guillotine. In the air, Jello saw Mungo's head being cut open by the horizontal guillotine, but his intuition told Jello that this level of attack would not kill Mungo. Boom boom. Fearing that Mungo would not die, Minhee detonated the two long swords inserted into Mungo's feet and quickly retreated with the impact of the explosion. Buy me some time, Minhee. Jello said to Minhee through the dedicated communicator. The horizontal guillotine just now consumed a lot of Jello's energy, so he needed a short recovery period. Okay. Minhee responded, and his eyes under the helmet became firm. Then, kryptonite green light appeared on Minhee's black armor. Under Minhee's intentional control, these green lights formed strips of texture similar to electronic circuits, using a more effective way to strengthen Minhee's power. Buzz buzz buzz. Silently, countless pitch-black spears pierced the air and turned into pitch-black meteors in the air. Hit. Minhee shouted in a low voice, and as his voice fell, those pitch-black spears pierced Mungo, and then Minhee pinched his right hand, and all the pitch-black spears exploded. Boom boom boom. Blood flowers burst out from Mungo's body one after another. Minhee and Jello saw the huge figure in the explosion stagger slightly. Minhee, retreat. Jello hurriedly notified Minhee and accelerated in the direction of Mungo. The ace armor was retracted during the flight, and the Hunter Knight sword armor slowly covered his body. On the ground, the huge figure like a demon in the smoke staggered slightly, and then let out a shocking roar. How dare you, scumbags, usurp the throne? The voice was full of energy. Could it be Mungo, whose neck was cut open? A big hand stretched out towards Minhee at a very fast speed. Minhee quickly retreated, and the terrifying figure in the smoke slowly walked towards him. How is it possible? Minhee looked at Mengji in great surprise. At this time, Meng's neck was cut in half, and his spine and blood vessels were still pumping. There were many blood holes on his body, and even his internal organs could be seen beating. On these wounds, there were many granulations squirming. With the help of these granulations, Mengji actually recovered visibly. Die. Mengji shouted, then clenched his right fist, raised it high, and then smashed towards Minhee like two heavy hammers. Bang. With a loud bang, Mengji slammed his right fist down. This fist condensed a terrible force that could destroy mountains and break peaks. At this moment, a figure blocked Minhee in front of him with a lightning speed. He crossed his arms to block this terrible punch. The shockwave spread immediately after the punch was thrown. The tornado-like impact blew away the surrounding smoke and even the mushroom cloud. The ground cracked and began to sink. After the smoke completely dissipated, Mungo saw who had blocked his angry punch. He sneered twice and then taunted. Hunter Knight Sword? You actually blocked my punch? Ha ha ha, it seems that you have made great progress. Stop talking nonsense. Jello's face was gloomy, and then he exerted force on his shoulders and shook his arms to force Mongo back. Minnie on the side also gave Mongo a flying kick. Mongo, who had not yet fully recovered, was forced back by this combo. After spitting out the blood foam in his mouth, Mongo looked at the combination of Jello and Minnie. I have to say, you two are very strong, but if you want to beat me, you are still too young. As soon as the voice fell, the orange gold diamond on Mongo's chest burst into a dazzling light. Under the illumination of this light, Mongo's injuries recovered within 1/1000th of a second, and Minnie and Jello didn't even have a chance to move. That thing again. Jello frowned, thinking of the scene when he first arrived in the war world. The orange gold diamond on Mongo's chest suddenly flashed, and this guy's strength increased greatly, defeating him with an absolute crushing state. It's exactly the same as the intelligence. Don't hold back, Hunter Knight Sword, the real tough battle is coming. Your destructive power is stronger than mine, so I will give you a chance next, and the task of killing Mongo will be handed over to you. Minnie's face was also ugly. He shook his cloak, and hundreds of artificial kryptonites fell off. Then his black armor stretched out hundreds of tentacles for predation, swallowing all these artificial kryptonites. The black armor absorbed the artificial kryptonite, and the pain it brought almost made Minnie kneel down, but the strong desire for a certain wish made him stand up again. He clenched his teeth tightly and uttered a word from between his teeth. Kill. The momentum is very good. Mongo's terrifying eyes showed a trace of joy, and the blood in his body that was eager for battle continued to flow, rushing towards Minnie, who had greatly increased his strength. The two collided with each other and started a hand-to-hand fight. Minnie and Mongo did not use any fighting skills, but just punched each time. The fist wind generated was dozens of times stronger than the shockwave generated by the heavy tank fire in a shell. Next, it's up to you. The double armor of the Hunter Knight Sword armor made a series of clicking sounds. Jello knew that the Hunter Knight Sword armor that had been repaired in a hurry could not continue, so he took back the Hunter Knight Sword armor, took off the Ultra badge on his right arm, raised it high, and said in a loud voice, Taro. With a loud shout, flames burst out, and the Taro armor gradually covered Jello in the flames. With a wave of his right arm, he swept away the flames, and Jello was wearing the Taro armor. The Taro armor was mainly composed of a red armor, and the silver armor with higher defensive power covered the important parts. The antennas on both sides of the head were like horns, and the optical eyepieces seemed to be in the same vein as the 7 armor. There was also a heat sink on the chest armor to dissipate heat. As soon as the armor was put on, Jello saw that the temperature of the armor began to rise. On the other side, in just a dozen seconds, the battle between Mongo and Minnie had gradually become white hot. Mongo became more and more excited as he fought, and the corners of his mouth were almost smiling to the back of his head. It hurts. Right. Minnie secretly spit out a mouthful of blood, but he continued to fight with Mongo. Even if his internal organs were bleeding in many places, he didn't care, because he wanted to give Jello a chance. When the next fist collided, a rainbow-like light hit Mongo's back, causing Mongo to miss the opportunity. Minnie took this opportunity to draw out 2 black spears, directly pierced next to Mongo's orange gold diamond, and detonated without hesitation. Boom boom, 2 more chapters added today, ending the war world, and the protagonist will also transform for the first time. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. The Miracle of the King of Jord War World on the Barren Land, the battle that will determine the future of War World is taking place. With Minnie, who consumes his life in exchange for power, delaying Mongo, Jello is able to exert the power of the Taro armor. Jello's hands form a T-shape, and colorful stream particles like a rainbow form stream rays, which shoot towards Mongo's back. Being restrained by Minnie, Mongo has no chance to avoid this surprise attack. After launching the stream ray, Jello immediately activates the high-temperature conversion system, and the high temperature of the machine body forms flames that appear from the gaps in the armor. From a distance, Jello, wearing the Taro armor, looks like he is wearing a coat of flames. How is it, Mongo? Minnie sneered and mocked Mongo, and then 2 black spears pierced Mongo's chest and then exploded. Boom boom, there were 2 more explosions, and the orange gold diamond embedded in Mongo's chest fell off and fell to the ground, with a little smoke covering the orange gold diamond. You two damn bastards. At this moment, Mungo was more or less angry. In anger, he threw a punch. Minhee hurriedly resisted, but was knocked back by this punch. After plowing a deep gully, Minhee barely stopped. After repelling Minhee, Mungo turned around and shouted, "And you." As soon as he finished speaking, he punched again. Jello also punched back and used telekinesis to control the flames around his body, turning them into a tornado and attacking Mungo. "Do you think this can hurt me?" Mungo said contemptuously, and then increased his strength to repel Jello. At the same time, in the sky, on the battleship that was about to fall, as the only survivor, Mungo walked to their fire control console. She raised her arm with difficulty and wanted to press the main gun switch. "Let's die here together." Thinking that she was about to become the queen of the war world, Mungo couldn't suppress the joy in her heart, but a boom sounded. The bridge was breached, and a figure appeared in the bridge accompanied by smoke. Mengana looked at the other party vigilantly, but she only saw the red cloak fluttering in the wind. "Who are you?" Mengana asked vigilantly. However, it was not anyone who answered Mengana, but an extremely crisp and loud voice, "Woof." The next second, an extremely swift figure rushed out of the smoke. It should be it that hit Mengana's stomach, rushed out of the bridge with Mengana, and fell to the ground. On the ground, Minhee and Jello were facing Mungo. Even if he lost his biggest backup, Mungo still had enough strength to face the two. Facing the surprise attack of the two, Mungo calmly blocked it. Both palms blocked a fist. No matter how hard the two people exerted, Mungo was still fearless. Mungo was so powerful. Over-limit release. Seeing this, Jello shouted, and the auxiliary system built into the Taro armor received the command and opened the most powerful system of the Taro armor for Jello. Over-limit release. An emotionless mechanical sound rang in Jello's ears, and then the temperature of the entire Taro armor continued to rise. Jello also continuously converted the energy in his body into stream particles, and at the same time used the stream particles and the high temperature of the body to improve the performance of the body. Jello looked at the countdown of 180 seconds in front of him, and then gritted his teeth, and even more terrifying power emerged from his fist. "Yeah!" Jello shouted, and his power suddenly increased, and he could even force Mungo back in a short time. "Not bad." Mungo praised Jello slightly, and then dodged Minhee's black spear, and said to the two at the same time, "But you two are still too young." After saying that, Mungo burst out with a strong impact from his body, forcing Jello and Minhee back at the same time. But Minhee and Jello both activated their strongest power, and after a little organization of power, the two attacked Mungo again. Jello jumped into the air to attack Mungo's upper body, while Minhee looked for an opportunity to attack Mungo's lower body. During this time, he actually fought Mungo on equal terms. But Mungo urged them, "Faster. Faster. We can't go on like this." Jello looked at the double-digit countdown on the information interface and made a decision. After dodging Mungo's punch, Jello flew upwards and stepped on Mungo's arm to reach the top of Mungo's head. "You want to die?" Seeing Jello was so ignorant, Mungo was furious. He didn't care about Minhee and directly punched Jello. Just in time. Ultra Explosion Fist. Jello shouted confidently, adjusted his body shape, and punched Mungo with both fists. As Jello's best move, Ultra Explosion Fist blasted Mungo slowly into the ground, and even made the skin of Mungo's arms burst with blood. Mungo was injured, and Jello was not in a good condition either. He was bleeding all over his body. In the end, he could only shout, "Minhee!" Minhee immediately condensed a giant black spear after receiving the order. The surface of the spear flashed with cold light, and then stabbed towards Mungo. "Damn kid!" Mungo cursed inwardly, but he didn't dare to take the black spear head on this time. He had to withdraw his fists and hold the black spear with both hands, while Jello had a chance to catch his breath. Under Minhee's control, the spear began to rotate, like a drill that was about to drill through the sky, drilling Mungo's hands into a bloody mess while continuing to move forward. "Use your full strength, Minhee." After a short breath, Jello flew behind Mungo and locked Mungo's arms tightly from behind. "Kid!" Mungo roared. The next second, blood and bone foam splashed, followed by steel fragments, and the black spear pierced Jello and Mungo at the same time. "Mungo, let me take you to leave this world together." Looking at the 3-second countdown on the information panel, Jello, whose body was pierced, was extremely calm. "Very capable, kid," Mungo said, not knowing whether it was contempt or praise. Boom! After the temperature of the machine body exceeded the limit, a loud noise echoed over the entire northern front. The impact of the explosion blew away countless dust. The shockwave alone formed a sandstorm, and Jello disappeared in the fire tornado holding Mungo. When the explosion occurred, Minnie sat on the ground with his buttocks, muttering, "We're in." But Minnie saw a figure gradually approaching him, and then a big hand grabbed him. He grabbed Minnie in front of him and said coldly, "You did a good job, 2 kids." The person who appeared was Mungo, who was severely burned all over his body. What about Jello? Where did he go? At this moment, in a space filled with gentle light particles, Jello slowly opened his eyes. There was no one else around except him, but a majestic voice sounded. "Go on the right path, young Ultraman. Before everything you wish for comes true, you can't fall down. Stand up. There are still people waiting for you. Awaken your strength and defeat your enemies." Real power. Jello was puzzled, and then he felt something was placed in his chest. "This has always been hidden in your body, the most blazing power." The voice sounded again. "In my body? Blazing?" Hearing this, Jello understood something instantly, and the next second, something incredible happened. It was like a ball of fire burning in his chest, and Jello felt full of power. At this moment, he looked back and saw the existence that spoke to him, and whispered, "Thank you, King of Ultra. No need to say more. Go, young Ultraman. Fight for everything that needs you. Fight to find answers. Fight to realize your dreams." A majestic voice, scarlet but not evil eyes that even have a sense of dignity, a noble cloak, and a red gem with mysterious runes on his waist. "He is the legendary Ultraman, King of Ultra." The next second, Jello turned around, and when he opened his eyes again, he returned to the world of war. When he looked at his hands, they were no longer flesh or armor, but a pair of extremely huge hands. Although these hands were a little illusory, they were full of powerful strength. Giant of Light war whirled on the ground, which was already in a mess. Mungo, whose skin was burned to the point of melting, grabbed Minnie with one hand and lifted him up to a height, his scarlet eyes full of murderous intent. "That guy actually tried to self-destruct. He's very brave, but he's still too naive." Minnie, who was held in the air by Mungo, kept struggling, but Minnie's body was already on the verge of limit. Even if he had great power, if he used it forcefully, it would only become Minnie's death warrant. But sometimes, even if it was a death warrant, there was a reason to use it. "Mungo!" Minnie shouted loudly, and then a green light shone on his body. His life was rapidly consumed under the effect of kryptonite, but his strength was also increasing rapidly. "Damn kid!" Mungo snorted coldly. The green light pierced his eyes so much that he couldn't open them. He had no choice but to let go of Minnie's hand. As soon as he broke free from Mungo, Minnie was like a dragon entering the sea. He raised his right hand, and thousands of black spears appeared in the sky. The fire of life burned fiercely, and the most dazzling flame burst out when it was about to burn out. "Mungo! Die!" Minnie shouted. When the pitch-black spear was about to fly out, he suddenly noticed that the light around him suddenly dimmed. "Is it dark? What is this?" Below Minnie, Mungo opened his eyes. At this moment, he saw a giant of light. This giant of light was nearly 100 meters tall, and its weight was probably inestimable. The giant of light was covered with a layer of light particles that flickered, or the whole body of the giant of light was in this state. The main body of the giant of light was composed of countless white light particles, mixed with some red light particles to form lines, blue and gold, but compared with red particles, the number of gold particles and blue particles would be much less. The facial features were a little blurry, but you could still see the smiling mouth and two oval eyes. There seemed to be a round object on the chest of the giant of light, but Mungo couldn't see it clearly, because the giant of light was too blurry, and the flickering light seemed to disappear in the next second. Looking at those eyes, Mungo could clearly feel that the giant of light was targeting himself. Behind that giant of light was a warship that was about to touch the ground. After landing on the ground, the warship made a terrifying explosion, and the blazing flames reflected on the back of the giant, as if adding a round of dizziness to the giant of light. Boom! At this time, a fiery red meteor fell beside Meng. Meng looked carefully and found that it was his daughter. Gina was still breathing at this time. She was completely different from before. She stretched out her trembling fingers and pointed to the distance, saying intermittently, "Father, that dog." These successive changes made Meng's head bigger. Why did another dog jump out? Meng glanced and found a white puppy with a red cloak. The dog bit Minhe's cloak and was pulling Minhe away. Meng wanted to chase, but the giant of light swung his fist. The huge fist occupied all of Mungo's vision. It was obviously huge, but its speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, the fist was delivered to Mongo. Unable to even move his feet, Mongo and his daughter were hit by the huge fist. The terrible fist crushed Mongo's internal organs, blood kept flowing out, and the hard bones that were obtained after thousands of hammers were also shattered. This punch was many times more terrible than being hit by dozens of 10,000-ton giant ships at the same time. The ground of the warworld could not withstand this terrible force, and was shattered layer by layer. Mongo gradually fell into the depths. After smashing through more than 100 meters of the ground, the giant of light retracted his fist. Mongo lay in a deep pit, next to metal and rocks that were still glowing red. His whole body was lying in a big letter in the 100-meter pit, and next to him was Mungana, who had died. After spitting out a piece of internal organs, Mongo smiled. He felt like he had survived a catastrophe and said, "I still can't kill him." His voice stopped abruptly because he saw the giant of light moving again across the 100-meter pit. The smile on Mongo's face slowly disappeared. The giant of light raised his right arm and held his left hand horizontally. His body, which had been flickering, became extremely dazzling at this moment, and a high-temperature reaction appeared in the air. The next moment, the giant of light swung his left hand and raised his right arm to form a cross. The positive polar specium energy and the negative polar specium combined, and finally formed a specium beam that shot out. On the root of the specium beam, the air turned into plasma. Even the instruments of humans on Earth could not read how many gigajoules of energy this was. No. Mongo let out a dying wail. The specium beam hit him. In just 2 or 3 seconds, Mongo's body began to vaporize and finally turned into a white vapor. Minky, who was carried into the air by the white puppy, couldn't believe it. He looked at the giant of light and murmured, "Is this the real power of the guy?" After dealing with Mongo, the giant's figure gradually became illusory, and the particles that made up his body became scattered, and finally slowly disappeared from Minky's sight. Following the direction where the giant of light disappeared, the white puppy took Minky to fly over. This process was more or less painful for Minky. After arriving at the place, the white puppy began to look for the target. Finally, it found Jello, who was in a coma next to a small pit. Jello was naked, and there were still red lines on his body that had not completely disappeared. The puppy came to Jello and sniffed, and finally stopped his eyes on the gravity watch, and then licked Jello's face. Jello felt very uncomfortable when being licked by the puppy, and then he opened his eyes in a daze, and then he saw the red cloak and agile figure. That must be the strongest creature in the world, super dog. When Jello saw clearly that it was a dog that licked him, he understood everything. "You came here for this, right?" Zero raised his left hand with difficulty, forced a smile on his face, and used a translator to translate what he said into Kryptonian. Then he said to the super dog, whose name should be Little Krypton, "However, I'm not a Kryptonian, you should know this very well, but I know a Kryptonian. His Kryptonian name is Kal-El, his father is Jor-El, his mother is Lara Lovan, and he has a cousin named Kara-Zor-El. Am I right?" Little Krypton. Little Krypton, who has a high IQ, can certainly understand. It barked twice, turned around Zero twice, and then rubbed Zero affectionately. "But I don't have the strength now. Can you wait for me for a while?" Little Krypton nodded to show that he understood, and he also took a breath on the side. After a hard battle, the dust finally settled, and Zero even got an unexpected surprise. Chapter Leave Warworld 3 days later at the top of the core tower, the strong wind blew Jello's hair, which had turned a little pale. Beside him was Minhy, who had taken off his armor. "It's beautiful." After a long time, Minhy looked at the city that had been renamed the City of Light. The thriving scene touched a chord in his heart. He slowly closed his eyes and let the strong wind blow through his body. The wind blew at his clothes, allowing Jello to see the green lines like creepers under his clothes. "Yes, it's really beautiful," but Jello opened his mouth to say something, but Minhy interrupted him first. Minhy shook his head and smiled helplessly. "It's a pity that I won't be able to see any beautiful scenery soon." Jello was silent. After returning to the City of Light, Jello did a physical examination for Minhy and finally found the cruel truth. Minhy only had 5 days to live, and this was the 3rd day. Minhy only had the last 48 hours left. As long as he closed his eyes, Minhy could hear the calls of his dead family members, which also allowed him to accept the arrival of death. "Can you promise me one thing, ally?" Minhy suddenly smiled, and the smile that was forced out of his pale and sick face looked a little scary. Hearing this, Jello looked at Minhy, who was about to leave. Perhaps out of respect for the dying man, Jello's tone became gentle. "You tell me, I will do everything I can for you. Keep it." Minnie took out a black ball and handed it to Jello. "Is this your armor? This makes me a little embarrassed," and Jello wanted to refuse, but Minnie had already expected this scene. "You have other armors, am I right?" Minnie looked at Zero with a smile, then forced the black ball into Zero's hand and said, "Be nice to him, maybe he can help you in the future. Maybe you will think that you can become a giant of light and don't need this power, but I can tell you responsibly that this power can make you feel easier when facing those guys." Zero caught the key point in Minnie's words and asked Minnie, "That group of guys? Are you talking about the Dicebora people?" "You're right, but there are far more than just the Dicebora people." Minnie nodded, and then added, "You should be able to guess that I have some kind of resentment towards Krypton, right? That's because the Kryptonians developed a certain technology that destroyed my planet. The Kryptonians even gave the technology a very appropriate name: Planet Destroyer." Planet Destroyer. Hearing this, Zero frowned. He seemed to have seen something similar in the comics before he traveled through time. It seemed to be a technology developed by the Kryptonians. Creatures transformed by this technology will be extremely aggressive, and their combat effectiveness will be significantly improved compared to individuals of the same species. It seems that the culmination of the technology of the Planet Destroyer is a set of armor with life. Thinking of this, Jello unconsciously glanced at the black ball that was forced into his hand. "Planet Destroyer no. 1. Minnie said again, telling Jello a distant story. "I call the thing that way. When my home planet Cydia was resisting the invasion of Dicebora, that thing suddenly selected a Dicebora. It forcibly developed the potential of Dicebora, allowing Dicebora to gain an advantage in the war. But we were not powerless at the time. Scientists on our planet gathered the power of the entire race to develop the Mahashya armor, which is what you have in your hand. The Mahashya armor can convert the high-intensity radiation emitted by objects into energy to strengthen the user and give the user power. But we still failed. The Dicebora with the Planet Destroyer destroyed Cydia, and I fell into the war world and became a gladiator. I wanted to leave here and take revenge, but Mongo was too strong and I couldn't beat him. I wanted to find allies, but those guys couldn't even take a single move from Mongo. As my life was consumed, I gradually lost my patience. Fortunately, I met you, and you know what happened after that." The story was a bit long, but Jello listened to it patiently. At the end, Minnie's eyes turned red and tears wet his eyes. "I'm too weak. If I were stronger, I could stop all that. I could." Minnie became excited. He waved his thin arms, as if he wanted to grab something that didn't exist. Jello was silent. He looked at Minnie and slowly said, "Let me tell you in advance, it's not that I don't want to help you, but the universe is so big, I may not be able to meet the Dicebora people and then avenge you. Have you ever thought about helping me to avenge?" Minnie stopped, looked at Jello, waved his hand and refused. "No, just help me pass on the story of Cydia, okay? I promise you, Minnie of Cydia." Jello promised. "That's good, thank you." As he spoke, Minnie closed his eyes, a tear fell from the corner of his eye, and then he stopped breathing forever. Although the time had not come, Minnie's life had already ended. In other words, Minnie's life had ended long ago, but his obsession pushed him forward. Now that Minnie has let go of his obsession, his life, like a candle in the wind, should also burn out. Alas, Jello sighed, and then buried Minnie's body. After doing everything Jello needed to do, Jello brought Shout to the basement of the core tower. After defeating Mongo, the City of Light harvested many Mongo collections, which included high-tech items, precious resources, and even magical items. Among these items, there is an interstellar shuttle gate. After a period of sorting, this is probably the most helpful item for Jello to return to Earth. "Sir, everything is ready." Lulu had been waiting here for a long time, and Amen was also beside her. She was wearing armor, lowered her head, and didn't want to say a word. Before leaving, Jello reminded Lulu, "Well, after I leave, you have to lead the development of the City of Light according to the documents I have sorted out, step by step, and don't aim too high." "I understand, sir," Lulu said softly, then turned his head away, not daring to look at Jello, but even so, he still said, "Sir, you must take care of yourself. Maybe the universe is round, we'll see you in the future." Jello smiled. He took a set of newly made Taro armor, redesigned Ace armor with nanotechnology, and repaired Hunter Knight sword armor, with Super Dog Shiaki beside him. With the opening of the shuttle gate, a blue light appeared in front of Jello. With the hope of returning home, Jello walked into it and completely disappeared from the eyes of all Jello and others. A moment later, on a planet in the universe, Jello opened his eyes and saw a familiar building, but there was one thing he was very strange about. How can this car fly? Looking at the flying vehicles in front of him, Jello couldn't help but sigh that the Earth has developed so fast. Or in other words, this is not the Earth. Next article. Zerene. The Dicebreath and Planet Destroyer mentioned in this article are not original, but come from the New 52 Supergirl comics. Dicebreath appeared in this series of comics, and Planet Destroyer. If you have read DC Knights, you will not be unfamiliar with the Kryptonian suit of Planet Destroyer, but the Planet Destroyer in the original comics is far less powerful than the one in DC Knights. As for the specific settings of Dicebreath and Planet Destroyer, I will write about them in the Zerene article. Things way wrong. An unknown planet. Looking at the vehicles flying around in front of him, Jello was dumbfounded for a moment. He looked around in a daze and found that the surrounding environment only looked a little like the metropolis, but if he looked closely, he would find that there was a big difference. The towering buildings, the high-tech technology, and the very abrupt flying cars, and the passers-by on the roadside with depressed expressions. Most of the passers-by lowered their heads and didn't want to pay attention to the surrounding things, so they didn't see Jello, who suddenly appeared. After noticing this, Jello looked up and saw that the dark clouds in the sky were about to collapse, and most of the sunlight was blocked by the dark clouds. What a depressing planet. Jello frowned, and the little Krypton beside him suddenly barked twice. Woof woof. Hearing the sound, Jello leaned down and gently touched the little Krypton dog's head, and asked, "Good dog, what's wrong?" Little Krypton sniffed Jello twice, then shook his head, and the L family emblem hanging on his neck swayed. "You mean my smell has changed?" Jello probably understood what little Krypton meant, but what exactly caused his smell to change? However, when arriving in an unfamiliar place, one must collect intelligence first, so Jello picked up little Krypton and ran out of the crowd. But before leaving the crowded place, Jello bumped into a young man wearing glasses who was coming towards him. Fortunately, Jello had the habit of suppressing his superpowers, otherwise the young man would have been crushed to pieces, but even so, the young man was knocked unconscious by Jello. The young man fell to the ground with his buttocks, and his facial features twisted because of the pain. Seeing this, Jello felt a little guilty, so he reached out and helped the poor young man up. "I'm sorry, I bumped into you." The language of this planet seemed to be in the translator, so the young man could understand what Jello said. The young man patted his clothes, stood up from the ground by himself, and smiled. "It's okay, but there are not many people like you who know how to apologize now." "What do you mean there are not many people who know how to apologize?" Jello was a little confused. Did he come to a place with extremely low moral standards again? Seeing that Jello was still holding little Krypton, the young man subconsciously believed that Jello was going to take his pet to see a doctor, so he said, "Go take your pet to see a doctor, I'm fine." "Okay, then take care of yourself." Jello nodded, then ran away with little Krypton in his arms. For some reason, Jello felt a familiar feeling from the young man just now, especially the pair of extremely rustic black-framed glasses with small curly hair, which reminded Jello of someone. But Jello couldn't care so much now. The most urgent thing was to find a place where he could connect to the internet to collect information, and while little Krypton said that the smell on his body had changed. After Jello ran away, the young man who had just been bumped by Jello put away his gentleness, and his eyes under the glasses became sharp. "Strange guy, who are you?" The young man looked at the direction where Jello ran away and murmured to himself, "Trana, don't be late." Suddenly, a voice called the young man, and the young man called Trana had to follow that voice calling him and leave. Not long after, Jello found a place similar to a black internet cafe. He didn't pay and quietly hid in the most inconspicuous place to start the terminal. The terminal in this place has insufficient computing power. When it starts, it will make a noise equivalent to an industrial electric fan. Fortunately, there are many such terminals in operation around, and the sound is even louder, completely covering the sound of Jello's terminal. What a strange fashion, Jello connected to the network of this planet and began to look up information. In order to understand the culture of this planet more deeply, Jello began to browse the shopping website of this planet. Most of the items here, Jello can find their corresponding ones on Earth, which means that this is a planet similar to Earth. But what's the matter with this thief's aesthetic of patchwork colors? Why is there no solid color clothing? All clothes are at least two colors spliced together. From the perspective of Earth's aesthetics, the aesthetics of this planet is very bad. After understanding this, Jello continued to look for everything about this planet. Zerna. Is that what they call their home planet? And the city I'm in is called Gustpolis. Why do I feel a little familiar? For some reason, although he knew he was on a foreign planet, Jello felt like he was at home, and he always felt like he had seen the name Zerna somewhere before. Let me see if there are any superheroes or supervillains on this planet. Wait, this is Batman. And Borderline. There were 2 photos on the terminal screen. One photo showed a guy wearing a yellow and purple battlesuit with a unique logo on his chest. If it weren't for the weird yellow and purple, Jello would have mistaken this guy for Batman. The other photo showed a bald man with a green cape behind him and a purple tie top on his upper body. His clothes were quite bad, and he was a lot fatter than Lex Luthor. What a fat bald man. Jello forced a smile while importing the photo into the Hunter armor. He would print it out when he got back to work to show Clark and the Batman who had the same bad clothes. I don't know if Borderline and Old Bat can still laugh after seeing the photo, so, this place should be similar to the combination of Gotham and Metropolis, but there is no Superman, and the hero guarding this place has become Batman. No trace of the Joker has been found for the time being, but Borderline will not do it so ostentatiously. This looks a bit like the Joker's style. Jello sorted out all the known information, and his handsome face suddenly didn't know whether to cry or laugh. After getting a general understanding of this planet, Jello left this black internet cafe. At this time, it was dark outside, and sin was growing wildly. After finding a place for Shao Krypton to rest, Jello came to the top of a building alone, letting the strong wind blow his clothes and hair, looking at this city full of sin, and whispered, "If this planet is really the Zona I know, then my half-earthling blood should bring me unexpected surprises." After that, Jello suppressed all the abilities brought to him by the Ultra Factor, and then jumped off the building. After suppressing his own superpowers, Zero is just an ordinary human with a strong physique. If he were on Earth, he might die. But this is Zerna. With a loud bang, the smoke and dust dispersed, and Zero, who fell into a dark alley but was unharmed, slowly straightened his back, and a touch of blue light lingered around his eyes. Just as I guessed, this is Zerna. Zerna is not an original planet, but comes from the story of Batman. It appeared in Batman, the Brave and the Bold. The atmosphere of this planet contains a substance called radon, or rosin, which can enable humans on Earth to obtain superpowers similar to those of Kryptonians. Zinji radon. Zerene in the dark alley, Jello swept his eyes and finally locked onto a pile of garbage. With a swish, 2 blue freezing rays shot towards the pile of garbage. Within 1/10 of a second, the pile of garbage turned into an ice sculpture. Looking at this scene, Jello smiled. If everything was really as he thought, he could return to Earth on his own. Hectares, Jello, who knew something, immediately began to breathe heavily. A large amount of alien gas was inhaled into his body. After absorbing certain substances in the air, his body with the genetic information of humans on Earth became stronger and stronger. The muscle tissue was slowly strengthening, so strong that the strength he had gained after thousands of trials could not match it. Even the vitality that was accidentally consumed was gradually recovering. Every cell was active, the bones became hard, and every muscle could burst out with the terrifying power to lift a 10,000-ton ship. The brain operated faster than most supercomputers in the universe, the vision was better than the astronomical telescope, and the hearing was many times stronger than the military radar. At this moment, Jello understood Clark's feelings through personal experience. So this is how Clark usually feels. As soon as the voice fell, Jello leaped into the sky. After absorbing a substance called radon in the atmosphere, Jello also had an ability similar to a biological force field, which enabled him to break through the speed of sound silently without causing a sonic boom. 3 times the speed of sound, 5 times the speed of sound, 10 times the speed of sound. Jello's speed continued to increase, and finally reached a very scary number, 50 times the speed of sound. And this is far from Jello's limit. Jello can even accelerate above 50 times the speed of sound, and it is not impossible to accelerate to 100 or even 1,000 times the speed of sound. At this moment, everything in the world seemed to be paused in Jello's eyes, and Jello felt that he could get faster. A few seconds later, Jello had circled the entire Zerna star. He stood on the top of the cloud, looking at the countless living beings under his feet, and suddenly a trace of emotion arose in his heart. So this is what it feels like to be a god on Earth. No wonder there is no reproductive isolation between Clark and Lois. It seems that the people on Earth and Krypton should be distant relatives. Without the perspective brought by the Ultra Factor, but with the perspective awakened by the human genes strengthened after absorbing radon, Jello can take in the entire Zerona. At this moment, Jello is the god of this planet. If Jello himself unlocks the superpowers brought by the Ultra Factor, he will gain 2 powerful powers at the same time. He can enjoy powerful powers and have a long life at the same time. He can become a god in the eyes of the people of this planet. In the DC world, if an individual is worshipped by a large number of intelligent life forms, he will have the opportunity to become a god. This individual does not have to be an intelligent life form. Stars like the sun are also fine. As long as they have been worshipped, they have the opportunity to become the supreme god. This is also a way to become stronger, but Jello does not want to take this path. There is no other reason. Although it can be accomplished quickly, it has defects and the upper limit is too low. If you lose your faith or leave Zerna, then Jello's strength will be reduced. It's a bit of a radical approach, so Jello doesn't want to take this path. Moreover, the Earth humans who absorb radon have similar weaknesses as the Kryptonians who absorb sunlight. If Jello remembers correctly, humans who absorb radon seem to be afraid of quartz. But this memory is too distant. Jello is a little unsure, so he activated the perspective eye, found quartz in a warehouse, and then flew over. Arriving in a warehouse in Gustpolis, Jello came to a wooden box and opened it without hesitation, and then Jello saw quartz, a very common mineral on Earth. Looking at the familiar transparent crystal in front of him, Jello felt weak, just like Superman would become weak when he met kryptonite. Jello also felt that his superpowers could not be used. After releasing Ultraman's superpowers, Jello felt much more comfortable. He closed the wooden box with telekinesis and confirmed his thoughts. Sure enough, quartz can make me weak, but I am not completely an earthling. Jello murmured to himself. If he had chosen to become stronger by absorbing radon, he would probably be cheated in the future. Quartz is one of the main rock-forming minerals, and there are many variants. There are also a lot of quartz on many planets in the universe. If he is not careful, he will be cheated, and the superpowers brought by radon to Earthlings are not as many as imagined. In addition to the most basic physical fitness, only the perspective eye, biological force field, and ice ray can be seen, which is far less than Clerk's superpowers. And Jello believes that he will have the opportunity to contact something better than radon in the future, but all this does not mean that Jello will give up radon. Let me try it. After muttering in a low voice, Jello closed his eyes and began to use the power of ultra-factor energy conversion. Energy absorption and energy conversion are the innate abilities of Ultraman. With this ability, they can absorb most of the light in the universe and convert it into their own energy. In that mysterious experience, Zero met the King of Ultra, and under the guidance of the King of Ultra, he initially awakened his superpowers and successfully turned into an unstable giant of light. According to Zero's feeling, although the giant of light he turned into that time was powerful, it was definitely not stable. You know, he couldn't hold on after only one punch and firing the spacium ray once. Moreover, at the age of about 20, it also cost him to forcibly turn into such a huge giant of light. Although turning into a giant of light consumed Zero's lifespan for thousands of years, after that, Zero's own abilities also increased again. Especially the recovery ability, Zero feels that his heart ability has become much stronger than before. In the future, maybe he can be a self-destructing infantry without relying on the Taro armor. In addition, the most obvious thing about the improvement is the energy absorption and conversion. Jello clearly feels that he is several times stronger than before. Assuming that Jello used to need an hour to absorb enough energy, now only 6 minutes is enough. With an idea, Jello began to use energy conversion. The energy converted by absorbing radon began to change and finally became energy suitable for Ultraman. Success. The energy stored in Jello's cells turned into another kind of energy. The converted energy is even stronger than before. Thinking of this, Jello opened his eyes happily, feeling that this is really a pleasant surprise. Alpha energy. When radon enters Zero's body, it will be filtered by the human physique of the Earth, and the energy will become high quality. At this time, after the second conversion of Ultra Energy Conversion, the energy will become even better. But the power provided in this way will be much weaker, and most of the energy will be used to improve the genetic information structure, making Zero's future broader. This energy is more sophisticated and efficient than Zero's previous energy structure and the intuitive manifestation is that the destructive power and duration of the light are stronger. It's like changing from thermal power to nuclear power. In this way, although Zero lost the opportunity to become stronger quickly, it also invisibly raised the upper limit of Zero, a hybrid who has both Ultraman and Earth human genetic factors. According to the game, it takes a long time for Zero to reach level 80 with only Ultra Factor. The advantage is that it is very comprehensive and not easy to be targeted. Radon can pull Zero to level 70 inches a short time, but the cost is obvious weakness and it is very easy to be targeted by the enemy. But Zero found a better way, which is to speed up his upgrade speed and raise the upper limit of the level. And this high-quality energy after secondary conversion is called alpha energy by Zero. Use the hunter weapon to record the radon content in the atmosphere of Zerna Star, so that Jello can synthesize radon artificially after returning to Earth. After doing all this, Jello returned to his and Chiaki's temporary residence. Under a small tent, one person and one dog snuggled together and slowly fell asleep. After Jello left, a figure came to the warehouse. He stood there, his brain working rapidly. Based on some footprints on the ground, this person profiled what Jello had done in this warehouse. "What are you doing, mysterious alien?" His brows frowned under the mask, as if he was worried about something. There were footsteps in the distance. In desperation, he sneaked into the shadows, left the warehouse, got on his flying chariot, and returned to his base. This base was transformed from a cave. Before the flying chariot stopped, a mysterious man in yellow and purple uniform jumped out. Capturing this scene, the mechanical butler, who was not very agile, came to the mysterious man and reminded him, "Sir, it is very dangerous for you to do this." "I know, Alfdia, this is indeed dangerous for Trano, but not for Fatman," said Fatman, the superhero of Gustpolis City in Zonaxing. "Okay, sir." The mechanical butler Alfdia's voice sounded a little helpless, but who made his master the superhero Fatman? "Give me all the abnormal readings captured by the radar and satellite today." Fatman took off his mask. This face did not look like Bruce Wayne, but a bit like Claire Kent. "Okay, sir," Alfdia replied. Then, Fatman sat in front of the terminal and checked the intelligence. Seeing that the satellite had to slow down tens of thousands of times to capture a trace of the corner of the clothes, Fatman showed a sad face. Fatman had never seen such a powerful life. The gods in mythology were probably just like this, right? Then why did he go to find quartz? Fatman wondered. But the quartz clue was the only one that Fatman had, because with all the actions of Jello, he only found this one clue that he could follow. Fatman stroked his chin and finally decided, no matter what, first carry a quartz in your belt for emergency use, and find that document the alien, Alfdia, before Rutu. I need to confirm his thoughts. Understood, sir. I will mobilize the surveillance resources of the whole city to find it for you. While answering, Alfdia connected to all the surveillance cameras in Gustpolis, and cooperated with their satellites to find that traces of Jello and Little Krypton. At the same time, in a factory, Rutu, wearing a green cape and a purple tights, was also looking at a photo. As the only two people on Zerna who could discover the existence of Jello, Rutu naturally had his own ideas, but now it seems that his allies may be more interested in Jello. A very promising creature. A spaceman with red skin and magic horns on his head said to Rutu. If Jello were here, he would recognize that this was the Dicebora who destroyed the hometown of Midhand and Men. But why did the Dicebora appear on Jarina? You need him, right? My ally. Rutu's fat face, which looked not too much like Lex, but somewhat similar to the Kingpin of the next universe, shook when he smiled. The great Dicebora will not treat you unfairly. The Dicebora said to Rutu. It can be regarded as a period of contact. The Dicebora also has some understanding of Rutu, knowing that this person will not get up early without profit. However, some petty gains are nothing to the Dicebora. For example, a war robot that is much stronger than Jarina can even destroy a civilization as long as these robots are given time. Everything is easy to talk about, everything is easy to talk about. Rutu laughed so hard that his eyes could not see. Humph! Seeing this, the Dicebora snorted coldly, despised Rutu in his heart, and then left. As the Dicebora left, Rutu's smile gradually disappeared. As long as I can rule Zerna, I don't care who you are, huh? Rutu snorted coldly, and then looked at the more than 20-meter-high civilization destroyer behind him. It was a humanoid with a black appearance, a pair of demon horns on its head, and a pair of mechanical arms. The mechanical arms had no palms, and the places where the palms should have been turned into two-hand cannons. But you were really beautiful, baby. Rutu licked his lips in a very greasy way, and his eyes turned into a perverted look when he looked at the civilization destroyer. In a small spaceship, the Dicebora was recording data. The planet is tentatively named Zerna, and the main life species have low development value. However, the Dicebora expatriate, Badia, discovered an alien life with development value on 14th day of 6th day of 5th minute in the 30th year of the Dicebora calendar. This life has demonstrated extremely terrifying speed and strength. After a thorough evaluation, it will be sent to the mothership. The record is complete. Badia mentioned Jello in his record. What is he going to do to Jello? Joel in the early morning, the temperature changed, and Jello and Krypton woke up from the tent. This was not because the environment was too bad, but because the L family emblem on Krypton's neck kept flashing and making a beeping sound, which made Jello unable to sleep. Rubbing his eyes, Jello asked Krypton with a big tongue, "Krypton, can you make your collar stop making noises?" At first, Krypton also felt that the collar was a bit noisy, but it soon understood why that collar sent a signal. It gestured on the ground with its paws a few times and pointed at Jello's gravity watch. "Are you saying that there are Krypton things on this planet, so your collar is like this?" Jello's face was strange. Krypton could understand what he said, but he couldn't understand Krypton's language, which was very uncomfortable. "Woof woof woof." Krypton shouted excitedly twice, and then raised his paw to make an affirmative gesture. Being praised by a dog, Jello's mood was very complicated. But if there are Krypton remnants on Zerna, then he might be able to return to Earth, and Jello would naturally not miss this opportunity. "Little Krypton. Let's go." Patting Little Krypton's head, Jello and Little Krypton set off together. In a place where the man and the dog did not notice, 2 satellites scanned them. They were Ruto and Fatman, but they only dared to determine the approximate direction of Jello and Little Krypton, and Jello and Little Krypton were too fast, so the 2 finally lost them, so Ruto had to change the plan, and Fatman thought that if Jello had no ill intentions, there was no need to pay attention to Jello. I don't know how much high-tech Clerk's biological father Joel stuffed into Little Krypton. In this way, Jello followed Little Krypton all the way, leaving Polis, and finally came to a red mountain. Woof woof. Little Krypton stretched out his paw, indicating that Jello was here. Buried. Jello walked forward and stretched out his hand to touch the red rock. The rock was very weathered and looked quite old. Jello waved his hand to signal Krypton to step back, then punched the mountain. Jello's power control was perfect. This punch was like the most sophisticated drilling machine, punching a passage in the mountain. Looking at the dark cave passage with a lot of smoke and dust, Jello and Krypton strode in. The ground was relatively flat, and it seemed that Jello's punch just now was just right. 1 man and 1 dog both hit supervision, and the darkness could not stop them. Finally, they came to a door. With the help of supervision, Jello and Krypton could see a fist mark on the door. "Oh!" Krypton looked at Jello with a resentful look in his eyes, as if to say, "This is your fault. I admit that I am a little strong now, but your Krypton thing shouldn't be so easy to break, right?" Jello was a little scared. This thing looked quite old. He was really worried that if it was broken by that punch, he would lose this rare opportunity. Woof. Little Krypton barked, and then flew to the door. This ancient door looked quite old. He placed his paw on the door according to the information on the collar. Suddenly, a series of Kryptonian language sounded, and through the translator, Jello could understand what was being said. Identity confirmation completed. Guardian of the L family, welcome to your arrival, accompanied by a very harsh sound, as if the mechanical structure that had not been moved for thousands of years began to operate. The door opened in front of the man and the dog. Inside the door was a very old passage, which was restarted only because of Little Krypton's arrival. Due to lack of maintenance, even the remnants of Kryptonian civilization looked a bit dilapidated at this time. A guide robot appeared in front of Jello and Little Krypton. When it saw Jello, 3 or 4 mechanical tentacles were ready to go, looking a little hostile. Noticing the hostility of the guide robot, Jello's eyes changed, but Little Krypton roared twice, "Woof woof." These 2 sounds probably added some kind of instructions to the guide robot, making it treat Jello as a guest. After treating Jello as a guest, the guide robot led the man and the dog to the depths, and finally came to a wide space. The preservation here is quite good, and Jello has seen some similar technology from Clerk before, so he guessed that this should be the control room of the Kryptonian spaceship. It's just that it's so old, can it still be driven? Jello expressed the deepest doubts in his heart. This spaceship can't fly anymore, but a voice suddenly sounded in the spaceship. Who? There was only Krypton here, so Jello couldn't help but be alert and put on a posture. Don't be so excited, Jello. He even called out Jello's name. In doubt, Jello turned around and saw a figure. According to the judgment method of the EF, this person is about 50 years old, with a black beard on his mouth, and his face is somewhat similar to Clerk. He wears black Kryptonian clothes and has an S-shaped family emblem on his chest, which represents hope. Mr. Joel. Jello looked at the person in front of him and immediately understood. Jarell has died in the explosion of Krypton, there is no doubt about that, but for the high-tech race, death is not the end. Through Krypton's phantom technology, Jarell turned himself into an existence similar to artificial intelligence, so that even if his body is destroyed, he can accompany Clark in another way, and the same is true for his wife Leela Lothan. Through this technology, as long as there is a locator to guide, Jarell's phantom can appear in most Kryptonian spacecraft. But since he appeared here, it means that he can go back and pass on the news that he is not dead to Clark, so that Clark can feel at ease. Long time no see, kid. Carl almost went through the Milky Way to find you, and you are now 100,000 light-years away from the most edged planet of the Milky Way. Jarell smiled. He also liked Jero very much. His life experience similar to Superman made him and Leela love him a little bit. We're still 100,000 light-years away from even getting close to the Milky Way. When Jello heard the terrifying number of 100,000 light-years, he felt a headache. He didn't know how to find a way to cross these 100,000 light-years, let alone how to return to Earth after reaching the Milky Way. It's really difficult under normal circumstances. Maybe when you return to Earth, things there will have changed a lot, but it's different here. Joel laughed, then turned and left, motioning Jello to follow him. He had something to say. Come with me, I'll give you a small gift, just think of it as a small gift from me for my brother Carl. After that, Joel took Jello to another part of the spaceship until he brought Jello to the storage room. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 1. The origin of Planet Destroyer Zerong. In the Kryptonian spaceship that had been buried for who knows how long, Jero and Little Krypton, led by Jarell, came to a display room that looked like a museum. There were many display tables that seemed to be used to store antiques around, and these display tables were covered with something that had the same function as glass, revealing an ancient atmosphere everywhere. Due to the long time, some items have been broken, and only a few items have been barely preserved. Come on, kid, this is left to you. Jarell came to a separate display table, pointed to a button, and motioned Jero to open it. According to Jarell's instructions, Jero pressed the button, and with a burst of hissing sounds, the glass-like thing opened backwards, and something that looked a bit like a necklace appeared in front of Jero. This necklace is very Kryptonian style, and it also has the S-shaped family emblem of the L family. Mr. Jarell, what is this? Jero asked Jarell. You should have seen Carl open the Phantom Zone at his place, right? Jarell looked at the necklace and explained to Jello. You can think of this necklace as a byproduct of our Kryptonian research on the Phantom Zone. Unlike the generator in the Fortress of Solitude that is directly connected to the Phantom Zone, when Kryptonian scientists first started researching the Phantom Zone, they wanted to build the Phantom Zone into an item so that it would be more portable. But later, for some reasons, this research direction was abandoned, but the L family kept some byproducts, such as the necklace in front of you. Listening to Jarell's words, Jello also saw what the necklace in front of him was used for. Isn't this a space device with a small space built in? Jello's eyes lit up. Even if this necklace could only give him space to store the transformer, it was more than enough. This gift is great, Mr. Jarell. Jello said gratefully. If the space inside the necklace is large enough, it can even bring him a qualitative change in tactics. Jarell looked at Jero kindly and said, take off the gravity watch on your hand. I will use the equipment on this spaceship to modify it for you. If you have a style you like, you can tell me and I will help you modify it. Really? I can customize the style at will. Jero's eyes lit up, and several watch styles suddenly popped up in his head. Of course, kid. Jarell waved his hand, and a virtual interface appeared in front of Jero, saying, build a style you like best in your mind. Okay. Jero immediately agreed and began to build a virtual model. Soon, a watch with green as the main color and black as the secondary color appeared. The dial of this watch had no numbers and hands, but there was a sign similar to an hourglass on the dial, and there were buttons on both sides. The overall lines were very mechanical, which was much more fashionable than the previous mechanical watch. Mr. Jarell, do you think this is okay? Jero showed the watch model he built to Jarell. Jarell pondered for a moment. It's much better than Carl's aesthetic. The transformation will take time. Before it's completed, I'll take you to see something that can let you go home. After that, Jarell took Jero and Little Krypton to another place. This place was a big like the power room of a spaceship. Looking at the dilapidated scene of disrepair, Jello sighed, and said, "Time can really change everything. The once glorious Krypton now only has research vessels scattered throughout the universe to tell future generations that there was once a glorious civilization." Jello didn't speak. He felt that there was nothing in this power room that could send him back to Earth, but out of respect for Jello didn't speak rashly. "Look at this, kid." Jello pointed in a direction and said, "That's Krypton's phantom engine. Krypton used this to discover many planets. As long as you have this, you can return to Earth, just like I sent Carl to Earth." "But Mr. Jello, according to the laws of physics, it takes enough energy to send a spaceship to Earth, and this spaceship," Jello told Jello about his doubts. "This spaceship is no longer usable, but there is still an escape pod that can be used. It only needs a little modification." As for energy, Jello looked at Jello with a smile halfway through his words. Looking at that smile, Jello immediately understood what Jello was talking about. With the help of Radon, Jello can convert alpha energy, a very high-quality energy. As long as he extracts alpha energy from his own cells, he can have enough energy to drive the phantom engine. But in order to return to Earth, what would it matter if he extracted a little energy from his own cells? Jello was eager to extract his own energy now, and it would be no problem to extract it for 5 or 6 hours. Jello, who took over the entire spaceship and began to transform the gravity watch and the spaceship at the same time, said, "The transformation takes time. You and Krypton will have to wait for a day or two before you can catch a ride. Before that, you can wait here or outside. Mr. Jello, I have something to ask you." Jello, who remembered the Dice Borer and the Planet Destroyer, asked Jello. After hearing the word Planet Destroyer, Jello's face suddenly changed, all the expressions on his face disappeared, and his eyes became very cold. "Jello, how did you know about the Planet Destroyer?" "This is what happened," Jello told Jello about the past. Whether it was in money or in head, he told Jello in great detail. After listening to the long story, Jello's expression gradually eased. After a long time, he shook his head and said, "I didn't expect that even if Krypton was destroyed, the technology would still exist in this world. Alas, it was all the mistakes made by our generation." "Mr. Jello, what exactly is the Planet Destroyer technology?" Looking at Jello's appearance, Jello was a little hesitant, but only from the mouth of Jello, the top Kryptonian scientist, could he know what the Planet Destroyer is. Glancing at Jello was obviously just an illusion now, but he looked tired. He sighed and said, "This matter is a bit long ago. It has to start from when my brother Zerel and I discovered that Krypton was about to be destroyed. Zing is invincible at a young age with mysterious superpowers. Zerong are in a spaceship that the L family once used." Jello told Jello about a not so long ago but complicated and far-reaching event. At the time, the young brothers Jello and Zerel were determined to change the status quo of Krypton, so they wanted to make the genes of Kryptonians evolve again. In order to make the genes of Kryptonians evolve again, Jello and Zerel did a lot of experiments, even touching the taboo of Krypton, cloning, and a forbidden life was born from Jello's hands. The final result was the Planet Destroyer technology, in which the biological armor Planet Destroyer No. 1 could also develop genes for Kryptonians. But the two young scientists of the L family still underestimated the technology of Planet Destroyer, and the potential of Planet Destroyer No. 1 was beyond their imagination. Even if a creature at the bottom of the evolutionary chain was attached to Planet Destroyer No. 1, it would have a leap forward in a short period of time. Whether it was physical fitness or intelligence, it was enough to stand at the forefront of most of the life in the universe. The evolution that other creatures needed tens of thousands or even millions of years to complete could be completed in a few minutes by Planet Destroyer No. 1. The two scientists were very satisfied with the result, but there was a problem with Planet Destroyer No. 1. While helping creatures to cross tens of thousands of years of evolution, the artificial intelligence of Planet Destroyer No. 1 changed. He began to think that he needed to find potential creatures to force them to evolve, so as to create a perfect ultimate life form. This process was very cruel. When Jello and Zerel found out, hundreds of deformed test subjects had already appeared in the laboratory. After discovering the error, Jello and Zerel worked together to seal up Planet Destroyer No. 1 and turn to research more controllable technologies. As a result, a genetic modification technology appeared. Through this technology, the potential of life can also be improved. However, after a period of observation, the modified test subjects all showed strong aggressiveness and hostility to all life around them. After this incident, Jello withdrew from the research project, which was finally named Planet Destroyer, and turned to research phantom technology, developing a new phantom engine, and being able to turn consciousness into phantoms, so that it can always accompany loved ones. But Z'Rell did not stop researching Planet Destroyer. Even on the eve of the destruction of Krypton, he still did not give up. Jor-El didn't know much about what happened afterwards. Because Krypton was about to be destroyed, he tried his best to develop a spaceship that could take Superman away from Krypton. However, Brotherhood is not so easy to wear out. Jor-El gave Z'Rell a copy of the design of the spaceship that would take Superman away, so that the younker of Z'Rell could leave Krypton. So, I said that the Planet Destroyer is a technology that should not exist. Do you understand, Jero? After talking about the old story, Jor-El seemed to relax a lot, but he was still very tired. Mr. Jor-El, Jero was silent. According to Jor-El, the Planet Destroyer is a very deformed technology, and its excessive side effects completely overshadow its positive effects. Judging from the design concept, this is a completely failed technology. But no matter what the reason is, I will completely destroy the Planet Destroyer. Jero said to Jor-El seriously. Jor-El smiled with relief and said, "Thank you, Jero. I don't necessarily ask you to fight the Planet Destroyer. It's great that you have this heart." "It's nothing, Mr. Jor-El." Jero smiled heartily. "Take a walk around first, Jero. I'll let you know when the spaceship is modified." Jor-El looked at Jero with a very intimate look, as if he was looking at his own child. "Well, okay, Mr. Jor-El." Jero replied. Then Jero left, and Krypton seemed to want to stay with his old master for a while, even if it was just a phantom. Jor-El went to help Jero modify the spaceship, so he asked the guide robot to take Jero around. With the guidance of the guide robot, Jero walked around the entire spaceship. Finally, he came to the research room of the spaceship. There were not many equipments that could be used in the research room, but they could be used. Jero studied the relationship between the human physique on Earth and radon in quartz. Almost a day later, Jello got the modified new watch from Jor-El. He hadn't chosen a name yet, so he called it the Little Broken Watch for now. The new watch was black and green, with a very obvious mechanical style and an hourglass logo on the dial. After wearing it on his left wrist, the whole watch glowed green, and then automatically adjusted to the size that best suited Jello. In addition to the original gravity application function and the small space built into the Phantom necklace, I also add a communication, scanning, data output and input for you. It's basically a supercomputer. Oh, by the way, considering that your genetic factors are still slowly changing, I added 5 genetic information locking functions to this watch. You only need to voice input 3R, -7X, -0 to A to recalibrate it. Jor-El explained to Jello on a side, and Jello was having a lot of fun. He even figured out how to use it without Jor-El's explanation. Jello pressed the buttons on both sides of the dial, and the middle dial rose, revealing the movement, and the dial projected a burst of green light. Then, Jello experimentally took off the hunter armor and put it into the green light. As soon as it was exposed to the green light, the hunter armor disappeared, and when Jello rotated the dial counterclockwise, the projection of the hunter armor appeared. Wow! This watch is great. Jello jumped up happily in the spaceship. Looking at the child who got a new toy, Jor-El smiled slightly. "You can play with your watch first, and the spaceship transformation will take 2 days. Yeah. Jello perfunctorily said, and then returned to the data room while humming a song. Little Krypton looked at Jello like this, thinking that this guy was not very stable in the war world. How did he become like this? At a young age, he is invincible with mysterious superpowers. It's amazing to use both hands to transform. He is the first to defend peace, singing a song that he thought fit him. Jello looked at the scientific research notes and papers left by Krypton scientists in the data room. Being in the Krypton spaceship, Jello almost lost his sense of time. Almost before the spaceship transformation was completed, Jor-El asked little Krypton to pull Jello to the hall. "Mr. Jor-El, what happened?" Jero asked in confusion. Hearing this, Jor-El called up the real-time picture of the city of Zernastargast. On the picture, there were dozens of robots slaughtering people, but this was not the whole picture. Jor-El made the picture more detailed, so that Jero saw a red-skinned alien. Diaspora. After recognizing the other party, Jero's eyes became serious, and a decision came out of his mouth. "Uncle Jor-El, the passage is open for you. Go, kid, there is still a hero fighting hard in the city." Jor-El replied. "Collect the name of the new watch. The comment with the highest number of likes will be used as the name of the new watch. Before the result is obtained, it will be temporarily called Little Broken Watch." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.